Well, if they say something and then they want a response and then they respond to you or whatever, it's 15 minutes total. Period. Go 30 minutes, 30 or 45. Yeah, okay. Me too. Thank you for your comments. Good evening, and welcome everybody to this open forum. I now call the January 30th, 2024 open forum meeting in session. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Peck?
Present.
Councilmember Christ? Present. Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring?
Here.
Councilmember Martin? Here. Councilmember McCoy? Present. Councilmember Rodriguez? Here. Councilmember Yarborough?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to call people from the list that were signed outside in the forum. You will have 5 minutes to speak, and the back and forth with council can be for 10 minutes, so 15 minutes total per person, or less. You don't need to go to 15 minutes. And I'm going to call the first 4 people so you can come and sit up here. Actually, the first 5. The first one I call will come to the podium. The other 4 can sit in these chairs. I see. I thought somebody was going to give me some instructions there. The first person on the list is Bill Gibson. Then we have Sharon O'Leary, Carmelia Van Horn, Shaquille Dalal, and Ben Sargent. The mic needs to go on, and 5 minutes. Okay.
There we go.
And you are Bill.
I am Bill Gibson from 1067 South Hobart.
Okay.
I am here to speak. I hope you can understand me. I've got some new teeth. I'm here to speak for a repeal of the sales tax on basic EBT eligible food items. Last time we took on this topic, we never did get an answer of how much money of the Longmont budget is coming from the food tax on EBT eligible food items. So I would like, as my one request to council, to get a clear answer of what the revenue is, what kind of money we're talking about that this repeal would affect. That's all I had to say tonight.
Okay, and if you'll just give me a second, I pulled that up earlier this evening. And if I remember correctly, a few years ago, there was a group of residents that were getting signatures to put a ballot item on about repealing the food tax, but they didn't get enough signatures, so that never made it to the ballot.
Well, Your Honor, the signature requirement is 10% of the voting population. And the amount of time that we were allowed to connect signatures was like 5 or 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. That is a horrible restriction on the ability to petition onto the ballot. Mm-hmm. So I would also like to change the ballot access rules for getting a referendum onto the ballot to be more like some of the surrounding communities instead of this restriction that we have in Longmont.
I am going to check really fast with the clerk. I do think, is that a state or a city?
That's a city. Because
It's the
Denver
city.
can do it for months.
Okay, I am looking it up right now. So this article that was about our food tax was written in 2018. And the amount of money that we received, according to the article in the paper, was $9.41 million. However, 9.41, yeah. And the food tax is 3.53%. If you are on food stamps, then you get the exemption. Or if you were on, let me look really fast. I'm sorry, I had this pulled up and then I closed my computer.
Mayor, may I help for just a moment?
Yes, please.
Hello, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. Thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah.
We do have a grocery tax
Yes.
rebate for pretty much anyone who is low income. So if you're on food stamps, you
That's-
take SNAP, you have LEAP, anything that income qualifies, you will refund your sales tax.
And how many people have participated in that refund this year?
Gosh, Becky,
I would expect it's a small number.
about 800 people so far this year,
Well,
but we're always getting the word out. So thanks for helping us to get the words out.
Yes,
2023,
definitely.
yes.
And
Rebate.
what do you have
Good
to
catch.
do to get that?
So it's just a one-page application on our website, and you can get rebates on not only, and you can get it in paper at our front desk also. It's a one-page application, and that can give you rebates for all of your utilities, property and rental taxes, as well as grocery
And
tax.
what's the eligibility?
What's the?
Eligibility?
It's if you are eligible for any other program, then you're eligible for ours.
All right, I guess that's,
Let me give you some information on your way out.
all right.
Thank you. Did that
Thank
answer?
you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for bringing that up. Sharon O'Leary.
Is it on? Okay. Sharon O'Leary, 534 Emery Street. I'm here tonight to talk about closures of public streets. The Chicago Colony developed the original mile of Longmont, and they sold lots. And the boundary lines were First Avenue to 9th and Martin to Bowen. And they designed it in a beautiful grid system. Easy to flow, north, south, east, west. We can all get where we want to get going. Okay? Chicago Colony first, then the railroad. The railroad was here when they developed the Chicago Colony, and then the east side of Longmont, specifically historic east side. And it developed first because of the close proximity to the railroad for building materials. And then the third thing that happened was the city of Longmont, okay? So the historic east side organized in the early 1980s with the boundaries of Emery Street to Martin Street east-west and 3rd to 9th north-south. So for years, we were very concerned about a quiet zone. And we were always pushing for a quiet zone, and I'm sure it bothered the rest of the city. But it bothered us a bit more because it ran right in front of Columbine Elementary School. And then with the old buildings, we didn't have air conditioning and we had our windows up at night. So for years, we were pushing for that, and we weren't making any progress. So in the early 80s, we organized as a neighborhood before there was ever even an NGLA, Neighborhood Group Leaders Organization. So at that point, we had 5 east-west corridors within our boundaries. So we had 4th Avenue, we had 5th Avenue, we had 6th Avenue, Long's Peak, and 8th. Well, 2 things happened in the 80s. They closed off 8th Avenue in a 2-for-1 swap with the railroad so that the city of Longmont could develop the east side up by 21st Street. And it happened. So they permanently cut off 8th Avenue. Then, to revitalize downtown, they made a public plaza on 6th Avenue. And they closed off 6th Avenue on the west side of Main Street. So from 5, we're down to 3. So presently, on a part-time basis, due to concerts and craft events, craft fairs and other events, 4th Avenue now is intermittently being closed off. So now we're down to 2.5 east-west corridors out of the original mile. Beautiful grid system being demolished. So then came the 2-for-1 to keep Boston Street, and it was between Terry Street and someplace on the east side. And so the city started having meetings about that. But all of a sudden, this 2-for-1 was put in a big pot, and it was seasoned with having a quiet zone, and they melded them together, and then they started holding public meetings. So there's a group of pictures. I sent our boundary lines, okay? So there was a snowstorm in March. This is May 2019. And in March, there was a storm, so they had to reschedule at Columbine Elementary. I have pictures. 15 elders showed up. It was the 20th, due to the fact that the 23rd was the last day of school. So there were sports banquets, honor banquets, choir presentations. So not well represented. But one of the cool things that came out of that was one of the big posters was crossing options. And they had one that it said at 5th Avenue, they could close it or do a 4-quadrant gate. And they also looked at 6th Avenue, and they also looked at 4th Avenue. So here we are, we're in the present day, and the city of Longmont is gonna close 5th Avenue. That leaves the people who live on the east side of town and the west side, but more impacting to the east side of town, one open east-west corridor. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't, and I know it's only gonna get worse. 3rd and 9th, the traffic has picked up so much that it's next to impossible to take a left. So all I started thinking about were all our new drivers going to high school and feeling that pressure to make a left-hand turn, or all those families trying to get their kids to the multiple events. I'm asking that communities are some of their choices. You have the opportunity to make a choice not to close 5th Avenue, but to put a 4-quadrant. I also feel like there have been systemic inequalities happening all the time on the east side, and schools.
Yeah.
On the west side, it's not the same.
So,
Was that 5 minutes?
yes, it
already?
was.
Bummer.
Well, let's say 5.5. So, Sharon, what is your ask again that you want at 5th Avenue?
To stay open. So I sent a letter to the PUC.
Okay.
And the PUC vacated, the judge vacated, the signs were put up, closure if you have concerns, write a letter, and I wrote a letter. And the judge threw it out, he vacated it, and he said, people need to go back and talk about this. And the point being, so I asked PUC, I said, what is this 2-for-1? And they said, it's an ask. It's not you have to. It's an ask. But the city's treating it, I know it will cost more money to do a 4-quadrant close, where they come all the way down and they cross over. It will cost more, but to take away another public street is so wrong. When we have documented on Main Street, in bronze, the original mile. It was always there. But for some reason on the east side, it seems like it's okay to close streets on the east of Main so that on the west side of Main can have what they need. Terry Street could be closed, sure it could be, but it's on the west side.
Okay. Is there anybody on council that would like to speak to this with Sharon?
Are any of you aware of it?
I have to be honest. I wasn't. This is
This is so wrong.
Yep. So why don't, first of all, council needs to get more information or the information from transportation and whoever's working on.
They're carrying through. I mean, the city has been trying to carry through, and it appalls me that you don't know. I talked to the railroad. The railroad says we are only doing what the city of Longmont is paying us to do.
Okay, Sharon, your contact information is here.
Yes, it is.
I will contact you. I will educate myself on this and contact you. And anyone else that wants to go for it.
Systemic equality lives on in Longmont if you close another street.
Thank
Thank you.
No, thank you. Carmelia? And I didn't mention that we do need your address.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Carmelia Van Horn, 1474 Mayfield Circle. And I'm also the mother of a lovely 4-year-old daughter.
I see her.
I'm here to speak to you about repealing the Longmont food tax. I've got my receipt here. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
With increasing inflation, people pay a far higher percentage of their food budget and total budget in general for food. Grocery taxes are regressive. Longmont's tax of 3.5% is the equivalent of charging approximately 1 day's worth of food. Only 6 of Colorado's 64 counties have a tax rate higher than Boulder County. And looking at our neighboring cities like Loveland, Lafayette, they don't have a sales tax on groceries, on food. And recently, Loveland was able to repeal theirs. As a result, people like myself who work in other cities end up going, occasionally I end up going to places like Lafayette to buy my groceries. And I think that there's something a little bit wrong with that. And just as a side note, I don't qualify for any of the government programs, and if I did qualify, I wouldn't accept them anyway. So, on Sunday, I went grocery shopping, and I thought, well, let me take a look at this receipt. And what I see here on my receipt from Sunday is $7.17 that went to this 3.53% tax. And I thought, well, let me take a look at my receipt and see, what on there could have been covered by that $7.17. So I thought I'd share that with you guys. A large bottle of all-purpose cleaner, 2 boxes of taco shells, 32-ounce bottle of grape juice, a frozen pizza, 2 bottles of kombucha, 1 package of beef sausages, 5 gallons of spring water, 2 chocolate bars for my daughter, 3 large yellow onions, or 2 large sweet potatoes, 2 containers of potato chips, also for her, 3 large beets, or 12 mini flax muffins, that's for me, 2 grapefruits, 3 romaine lettuces, or 3 pears, or 7 large carrots, 7 bell peppers, 7 oranges, or 5 avocados. Lastly, one of my daughter's books costs about $7.17. Could the city of Longmont stop taking books from babies? That's all.
Councilor Martin.
Although I agree with you in principle that the food tax is a little unusual. I would like your opinion as to what services the city of Longmont should reduce or stop providing.
A direct tax would be great. For those services that you want folks to pay for a direct tax. Or if you're through utilities, I pay for utilities, sewer, those types of things. I pay for those directly.
So that doesn't answer my question, though. What would you prefer to pay for on a fee basis?
Right,
What
a
city
direct
service?
tax, whatever I'm paying for, I'd like to be taxed directly for that service.
Such as, I'm sorry, but
Give me
direct
an
tax
example.
tells me nothing. You know, the utilities are Tabor Enterprises,
Right.
and we can't tax you for that. They have to be done on
I
a
pay for those
for-fee-
directly. I pay
for-fee
utility bill.
basis.
Yeah.
Yes. So what, there are two ways to, because the
So
budget
this tax
is-
goes into a general fund, is that right?
the sales taxes go to the general fund.
Yeah, so what exactly are you?
Well,
can you
most
clarify
of
what you're asking?
most of the general fund goes to city employee salaries. Would you think we should cut those?
Yes,
Good to know. So you would be willing to accept a lesser level of service from
Yes,
city
ma'am.
employees?
yes, ma'am.
All right, good to hear. Good to know.
Thank you for bringing this up, and I do think it is worth council discussing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shaquille Dalal.
Shaquille Dalal, 219 Francis Street. As always, I'm here to talk about the issue of housing affordability. The high cost of housing is a crisis in the city of Longmont. We now live in a community where people with children can't afford to live. The average age of the city is increasing, and the enrollment in St. Vrain Valley school districts in the Longmont boundaries is getting lower. And where families that have lived here for decades are watching their kids leave because young people can't afford to put a roof over their heads in the city of Longmont, and where senior citizens can't downsize to a smaller home after maybe their kids grow up and leave because there's nowhere for them to downsize to. There are no affordable or attainable starter homes in the city of Longmont. And so as a result, those senior citizens are trapped in their giant homes that they don't really need anymore because there's nowhere for them to downsize to. As you've heard me say many times before, the cost of housing is a choice. It's a choice that we make as a community, and it's a choice that's set in our land use policies. I'm here to ask the council, when are we as a city going to take the issue of housing affordability seriously and pursue a full menu of options for reducing the cost of housing? Right now, 72% of homes in the city of Longmont are single family. This is the type of housing that is worse for the environment and worse for the cost of housing because of the inefficient ways that it uses land. Now, those inefficient uses of land are in part driven by our land use policies that require inordinate setbacks and inordinate spaces between different types of homes for no other reason other than to inefficiently use that land and drive up the cost of housing. For decades, Longmont encouraged the construction of single-family homes through policies that sprawled the boundary of Longmont outwards. And this created artificially cheap housing at the cost of our environment and creating a community that is dependent on cars and where pedestrians die crossing streets because those streets are designed to prioritize speed over the safety of the people who live in this city. I'm not talking about banning single-family homes. What I'm talking about is making options available for people who want to build an ADU or a duplex, or make it possible for a teacher or a city employee to live in the city that they serve. Because the truth is that city employees don't get paid very much, and as a result, most of them don't live in the city anymore. And I think that it is a detriment to the city to have our city government run by people who can't afford to live in the city. This is not a gated community. This is a public, welcoming environment and a place that strives to be inclusive, that once had a motto that said, "You belong in Longmont." For that to be true, it has to be possible for the people that make this community happen to be able to afford to live here. This is going to require this council to change the land development code to allow missing middle housing types, and they have to be allowed in every single neighborhood in the city. We have a crisis, and it is time for us to take dramatic action. So here's my question and what I'd love to discuss with you tonight. Is this the year that we're going to get serious about addressing the cost of housing? Are you, the council members who are here today as our elected officials, willing to be the leaders that our community needs by making the full menu of housing types available to our community? Are you willing to take the action required so that there's no neighborhood in the city that can't have a young family or a police officer or a pair of senior citizens that want to gracefully age in their own home?
So I can answer this, but if anybody else would like to chime in, go for it. Okay. Okay. So Shaquille, no, this is not the year we're going to do that because we've already addressed it.
You believe that the cost of housing is now attainable in the city of Longmont for the average family?
No, because we are in the process of building it. We just had, last week actually, the council okayed the developer for our Mustang project, which is at the southern end by Costco.
How many homes is that?
184,
How many homes does the city?
185.
How many homes does the city need according to the
Excuse me.
city's own housing
I
needs
am
assessment?
I am going to answer this first before you, let me tell you what this is. It is a combination of attainable housing, for sale attainable, and for rent, as well as for sale deed restricted affordable, for sale and for rent. We are going to break ground on that this year, and it has taken a couple of years to get the funding together for that. We also have attainable housing in, shoot, I forgot what is the next project that we have?
Are you possibly
sorry.
referring to the Somerset development, which will be 12% affordable?
Well, the Chrisman is affordable, and that is on Hover Street.
How many units are in that development?
I can't remember how many are in that. How many are in that development, Harold? But we've been working on this for quite a few years, and it's really, it's not overnight.
I agree, it's not overnight.
So go ahead, Harold.
So we have about 600 units in the pipeline over the next 3 years. Part of that is a Chrisman project.
Yeah.
Which is affordable. It's approximately 85 units. We also have the 50 Zinnia, which is the 55 permanent supportive housing
Right.
units. We just received tax credit approval for Ascent.
Yes, that's what.
And that's going to be another 80, I believe, around 80 units, plus or minus a few. That's going to be for families, and so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units for rent.
With childcare.
And that's going to have early childhood education associated with that. Let me see.
And,
Zinnia.
Harold, if you don't mind me asking, do you believe that the city of Longmont is ever going to own 14,000 units of housing in the next 5 years or 10 years?
So I think part of that.
Because that's what the city's housing needs assessment says it needs. But in my opinion, I don't believe that it is practical for the city of Longmont to build that many units. This is not an issue of government action. This is an issue of allowing private actors to build more housing in the city. For example, by converting a single-family home that is too big into a duplex. That's just a thing that we prohibit as a city, but have no reason to prohibit. That is how you get 14,000 units of housing. It's not by, and I admire the work that the Longmont Housing Authority and that the city of Longmont is trying to do to build permanently affordable housing, and that work does need to continue. But to build attainable housing, market rate housing that does not require a government subsidy, that requires there to be more housing that is privately available, and that housing has to exist throughout the city, because the city government doesn't have enough money, right?
So have you, and I don't know the name of this project, but have you driven on Nelson Road and seen the huge apartment complex that is going up there? Have you been on Main Street that turns into 119 and at the Triangle and seen all those?
14,000 units.
Have you seen those?
I have seen them. And the sum of all the projects that you have
But
listed
those
here
are
today
not-
have been maybe 2,000 units. 14,000 is what we need today, right? If 10 years, when the projects that Harold is working on right now and the ones that are in the pipeline are coming through, we're going to need more than 14,000 units.
We're not going to get 14,000 units today. It isn't realistic, Shaquille.
No, we need 14,000 units in the next 10 years. We need 14,000 units today, and then we're going to need more as the city grows over the next 10 years. And so what I'm asking is if the city council is willing to allow the city to build those units. Because right now, the land development code prevents that. It prevents us from building enough housing for the demand that already exists, plus the population growth that the city is also already planning for. That is why the median home in Longmont right now costs $585,000, because we have a lot of demand and no supply.
Shaquille, the legislation is working on that at the moment as far as allowing different types of homes. From my perspective, I'm going to wait until see what the legislation comes up with on the state.
You're referring to the state legislature and the transit-oriented development that they want?
So I am going to turn it over to Councilor Martin next, and then Councilor McCoy, and then Councilor Hidalgo Faring. So let them weigh in. We have 4.5 minutes, so let us speak. And I'm looking for you. They all went off.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I was going to say, all of these, the answers that Mayor Peck gave are correct, but except one. And that is the answer to, is this the year? This needs to be the year that we give serious consideration to more code changes. And we have already seen that such code changes, if done incrementally, are not an excessive burden on the staff, because the staff is working right now on expanding the allowed use into more types of zones for service industries that have, where it's been a problem for people who commute, for example, to not be able to have childcare close to where their jobs are, things like that. And if those code changes are easy, then there are many more. And yes, the legislature is going to have to do something to allow ADUs in neighborhoods that have homeowners associations, for example. That'll make a huge difference in the amount of infill that we can have. There are many ways to do it, but to keep making those incremental changes that allow infill housing to be easier and cheaper, and multifamily housing to exist in more places is something that we can do this year. And I, for one, will be looking for those opportunities and voting for them.
So we have been bringing, as Councilor Martin said, our code changes back incrementally. But one of the reasons we do not have condominiums, that we do not have duplexes, is because of the construction defects law. There are no developers at this point will build them. So that is being looked at both on the local levels as well as on the state levels.
So,
I'm gonna call
but
out
if you rent
Councilor
out half
McCoy.
of your home, that doesn't have to be a duplex, and that's not necessarily subject to construction defects law, but that is also a thing that we do not allow as a city.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Okay, you asked us at the very beginning here when we were going to get serious, and I take this very serious, as I know these other folks do as well. And everything that has been told to you tonight has been a pretty serious approach to trying to solve this problem. My question to you is this: when are you going to get serious about not being an activist and focus more on the idea of service to your community? Or have you applied to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Housing Authority or anything else like that? Because that's where we need people. We need people that are passionate like you coming forward with that sort of drive to try to see these things through, than to try to sit out here and be critical of what we're not doing when we're doing all kinds of positive things to make this community a better place.
So in terms of my activism in the community, yeah, I agree that sitting on the bench isn't sufficient. That's why I've started a group in town that's working on housing affordability called Launch Housing. I also am not eligible to sit on the Planning and Zoning Board because I'm already occupied with a different city board, and one cannot serve on more than one of them. I sit on the city's police review board. I also am on the board of the Longmont Community Foundation. I've been pushing the Longmont Community Foundation to take the issue of housing affordability more seriously as well. So, no, I'm not sitting on the cheap sheets and throwing shots. I am pushing my elected officials on the issues that I think are important and using this avenue among many others to do
Councilor
so.
Hidalgo Faring. Thank you. Shaquille, your 5 minutes are up. Let Councilor Hidalgo Faring answer, please.
You know, I think some of the stuff was mentioned by Councilmember Martin, and the other piece I wanted to also bring up is, he has done, I've seen the work that he has done, and he's contributed, and there are many ways to contribute to your community. The launch housing was one. LPM, you've done work on that.
Yes, I
in
was
the
on the Port
past.
of Longmont Public Media.
And the public, yeah, so there were other things as well. But I also wanted to mention, during my entire time on council, we have looked at the codes. I learned that it's a long process, and it's, time's up. It is very frustrating, but we do have an item at our retreat on February 9th and 10th. Anybody's welcome to come in and out as often as you want to. Affordable and attainable housing overview. So that's when we're going to take a deeper look and have a roundtable conversation about what exactly we need to approach and what are our goals going to be for the next year moving forward. We're chiseling away at it. It's going to take time, but that is a priority. As a renter, yeah.
And now
I feel you.
I feel you. And now that you've brought it up, we will discuss that portion of duplexes, changing single-family homes into duplexes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ben Sargent.
Okay, I am going to, I brought a couple slides, and feel free to get a copy of this from the clerk. Okay, so last open forum, I was here and I talked about food security, growing food locally, regenerative agriculture. So I'm just going to give a quick update on some things that have happened recently in Boulder County. There was a program started in Boulder called Restore Colorado, Boulder County, that asked farm-to-table restaurants and other businesses to voluntarily collect 1% of their revenues towards a fund that would fund regenerative agriculture. That program has now gone statewide, and their funding was $200,000 this year to fund projects that fight climate crisis by improving soil health and sequestering carbon on local farms and ranches. And according to Boulder County, these projects estimated to have sequestered over 4,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent to the carbon footprint of 800 homes annual. So, in other words, Boulder County is taking regenerative agriculture seriously. Fort Collins just announced recently 85 acres to be put into a year-round or seasonal cattle grazing program to achieve ecological goals, provide effective irrigation, rotation of animals to achieve soil health improvements, and reestablish nutrient cycling. So Fort Collins is also getting on board with regenerative agriculture as a way of, killing many birds with one stone, I guess. But certainly the carbon cycle is an important part of those activities in regenerative agriculture. I'm more interested myself in the food security. I think we should have a goal of growing 30% of our annual food requirements in a short truck ride. So local and hyper-local. So just really quick, on this first slide, what is rotational grazing? Is where you move animals around so that they eat down the growth but don't damage it. The roots, if you only eat 50% before and then move the animals on, the roots immediately regenerate that. And it's much better for the ecosystem and for the soil and for carbon sequestration. And so one recent study showed that grasslands are actually a better, a more resilient carbon sink than forests. So forests are considered a larger carbon sink, but it's susceptible to forest fires, which kind of undo the work of the trees. So grasslands, most of that biomass is underneath the soil and protected from fires. So we think that every region should be focused on how to adopt regenerative practices in our region. And we think that Longmont can be doing this. So you asked me to come up with an idea on how to use Longmont City open space. So this is the first idea. I think we should explore, and I'm asking you to create a task force to explore the use of open space in Longmont City or other city-owned lands to be managed in a regenerative agricultural trial. This would be a 3 to 5 year trial. There's a couple organizations that the city could draw on. One is called Drylands Agricultural Research, or DAR, that's based here in Longmont. And they are showing ways to recover unirrigated range as productive farmland. There's another Boulder project that's underway right now that's going to bring in the city, looks like a 80-acre plus 180-acre parcel in Boulder and Boulder City and open space combined that will be bringing in trials of regenerative practices that have been proven in other parts of the world, but to see if they will work here in Boulder. And I think that once these best practices can be proven out for here, that we can, then any farmer around in the region can start adopting these. And so I put together some references where you can, people that you can talk to help formulate this task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Prick. So is this somewhat similar to what Louisville was doing with some of their open space to kind of, they had goats coming around and eating down some of it for the purpose of kind of fire mitigation, eating out some of the undergrowth and that sort of stuff, along with just the overall concept of having your food, local?
Yeah, so the Rent-A-Goat program, and there's another farmer that's getting a flock of sheep that's also sort of rent a flock. So yeah, those are mostly used for fire mitigation. They wouldn't really be considered rotational grazing. Rotational grazing is an intensive agriculture where you've got a lot of animals in a small place, but you keep them moving around. And so it improves the productivity rapidly in terms of the soil, and it improves the soil health rapidly. Whereas the fire mitigation use is more like, an annual, once a year kind of visit from the goats.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I don't have a lot to say. I just have a suggestion for you.
Okay.
Which is David Bell in the
Yeah.
Parks organization. You probably know that the city of Longmont manages its agricultural preserves of open space very actively, and make sure that they're under cultivation and all of that, and also that the Parks organization is experimenting with what native cultivars grow well and so on. So it is sort of just one small step for the city to engage itself in exactly the kind of agriculture you're talking about, and we're talking about 800 acres potentially.
Right.
So my suggestion is have a conversation with David Bell. I know he would enjoy it, and perhaps a good plan can come forward later in the year for something that the city can do itself rather than just incentivize.
Right.
Great. So my question to you is, do you want to be on that task force?
I certainly would be happy to either as a convener or as a participant. Yeah.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. So the next 5 people are Mary Lynn, Polly Christensen, Joseph Montant, Karen Yegi, and Prudence.
Hello, my name is Mary Lynn, and I also live at 744 Atwood, which my husband, the previous speaker, neglected to mention. And yes, I'm concerned that the city seems to be a little over its skis with some of the projects it's taken on. And I know other people here will speak more about this, but whenever I hear the discussions about affordable housing, I think, but what about affordable food? What about growing our own food? What about the most basic aspects of sustainability, which is to grow local, to eat local, to grow the soil so that it is the most effective carbon sink after the ocean. We can't do much about that here since we're in the West. And I think it's worth mentioning something that Ben didn't mention in his slides, which is that once the soil is renewed, it's then able to go into rotation to grow food for humans. Every time I hear about how we need 20,000 units, I ask, who said so? Why has Longmont decided it needs to grow at the rate it's growing? And why isn't Longmont also looking with urgency at retaining as much land as possible for growing our food? The average density in the United States is under 100 people per square mile. In the West, it's lower than that. Why does Longmont have to be reaching 4,000 residents per square mile? Why are we growing on some of the best farmland in the West? Why are we growing houses there rather than food? Which brings me to the one point that I really want to make today, which is that we have to have a task force that's not just looking at agriculture, but at food security and food sovereignty. I did a lot of research in the last several weeks, and I must say, we do have a regressive food tax. Niwot doesn't have one, Lafayette doesn't have it, Meade doesn't have it, Firestone, and Loveland, by a 70% majority, repealed their food tax. I know the people here, if you just asked them, they would say, yeah, we don't want to pay that food tax. I think that it's something that needs to go. And we need to be looking at balancing the quote unquote need for growth in housing with the need for growth in food. So my last question is, to follow up on what Bill Gibson was talking about, I think it's almost a hostile act when you know in your bones that people here would vote to repeal the food tax. Why shove this down to a process for a ballot referendum when it appears that, and this I did not research, it appears that there's really quite a high onus of signatures. And I'd like to know how Longmont compares to other cities and how many ballot initiatives have successfully ended on the ballot. Because I think if the people here and the dozens of people I know who are ready to work on this went out and gathered signatures, we could gather the number of signatures that Loveland did. They were at the farmer's market every single day. We know because we were there at the farmer's market as well. But why put us through that? And what actually is the process? How difficult is it? So, I'm done.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to point out that the results of the housing needs assessment were not a growth target at all. They did not relate to expanding the Longmont economy. Rather, they related to increased housing needs for organic growth, that is, children growing up and needing their own place, for accommodating people who are inadequately housed, like their families, are growing and they need to move into a bigger house, and frontline workers who work here but have to commute, which is dirty and ugly and is essentially a tax on individuals because you're taking their time and their money in addition to requiring them to pollute. in order to get to their job, and that none of those things would be true if they were able to afford to live in Longmont. So Longmont's housing needs assessment addresses those demographics. It is not a growth target, and so I just want to point that out and make sure that we don't characterize it that way.
Okay, but how about my question about what are we doing about growing local food sustainability as a climate, if you will, as an environmental goal, and as simply the baseline goal for sustaining human populations?
I think what we told your husband is because I know David Bell is definitely in favor of that, of soil sequestration and having a program. But I think that a good thing for you to do also is go to the Sustainability Advisory Board.
I sit on that board.
Fantastic.
There's been very little interest in this. Every meeting is about electrification.
Oh.
With a little bit of which I don't understand the logic of that either, frankly. I mean, Excel and PRPA are building gas plants, but there's a goal of eliminating. I think the city is way in front of its skis on a number of issues.
Okay, Mary.
I didn't bring that one up today,
No,
but.
And I'm only cutting you off because you've had your 5 minutes, and I agree with you on the soil sequestration and regenerative soil. So let's talk about it more and see what we can do. Because I agree.
I did have one more question about the ballot initiative process. How do we compare it to other cities, and how many ballot initiatives have made it onto the ballot in the last few years?
That's a great question, and there's some research that needs to be done for that. So can we get back to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Before you leave, can you leave your email address? And I think that Councillor Hidalgo Faring would like to address your question as well.
Sure. Why not? So thank you for your comments. Since the last open forum, I think when we heard from your husband, I've been doing a little research and been in contact with one of our county commissioners on this topic, as well as I sit on the RCAB, the Resource Conservation Advisory Board. And that is one of the areas of study. So we have several subcommittees, and that is one that I sit on, is around the soil. So it's composting, but soil regeneration. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. When our oceans die, we die. If our soil dies, we die. So there is urgency in that. And, I feel like, we do have to create a balance. And where I feel like one priority doesn't take precedence over another. I think as council members, we all have to address all these needs with great urgency. We have in front of us our goals and our council priorities. And so with sustainability being something that encompasses all of what we do. So we can't address housing without ensuring that we have that balance, that we can adequately feed our people, have
I've seen
those
nothing happening in that, though, but if you could put together a task force,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to help recruit a
Well, let's work
professional.
on
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I think that's just creating actionable items. So I
you.
appreciate that and coming forward with that. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, one more. Councillor Martin.
I'm not opposed to the idea of a task force for sustainable agriculture, but I would like to put a restriction on it. The United States has a Department of Agriculture. Locavorism is, incentivizing it is way outside the jurisdiction of a Colorado home rule city, and we should not spend a lot of time on that as opposed to things that are attainable by the city, like carbon sequestration through our agricultural management.
Okay, thank you. The next person is Polly Christensen.
Hello, Mayor and councilors. My name is Polly Christensen. I live at 410 Judson Street. I'm here to thank you instead of criticize you. I'm here to thank City Council for two good housing projects. The Mustang project near Costco and the Xenia project near the Suites off Sunset. When I initiated the affordable housing ordinance years ago, which is called the inclusionary housing ordinance now, this is exactly what I had in mind, and I worked on the beginnings of both these projects, which, as we know, it takes a long time to get stuff done. Everybody's frustrated, but the important thing is that it gets done. The Mustang project will have both for sale and for rent housing at affordable or attainable levels. It is essential that people, especially young people, have a path to home ownership. The best thing is, this project gives right of first refusal to city employees who provide the hard work necessary to provide all our services for Longmont. The Senior Project provides affordable housing and wraparound services to low-income and disabled people with a developer who really understands their needs and wants to build this kind of housing, which is very rare. Those who say we should leave housing up to the market seem unaware that the market has been in control of our housing since the election of Richard Nixon in 1969, who turned the building, maintenance, and management of public housing over to real estate developers such as the Trump family, who would not allow anyone non-white to live in their housing. The final blow came when the Reagan administration greatly diminished mental health facilities, leaving thousands of mentally ill homeless. We've been living with market solutions for nearly 55 years. That is how we got into this mess, where 60% of Boulder County households are cost-burdened with housing. Eliminating zoning, and this is a fad right now, eliminating zoning and packing people in like sardines is not the answer. The further commodification of our homes and our neighborhoods is not the answer. This is not what other countries do. We need to return and increase government building, maintaining, and managing quality public housing for rent and for sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Is there any discussion on council? Okay, this next one is Joseph I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Montante? You got it. Ooh. It's a first.
Very good, that was good. If you're French, you can say Montani. I'm half French, so
okay.
Either way. But my name is Joseph Montani, and I live at 2973 Breakwater Drive in Longmont. And I was asked to come and speak tonight, and I'd like to, lend my support to speak for the repeal of the grocery tax. I do believe that the cost of living is becoming unbearable for many people, and every little piece that's taken out of their pocketbooks ends up causing them to struggle more and more for necessities. Importantly, food and rent and all the other aspects, energy, are just whittling away at our freedoms that way in that regard. So I'm just curious, also, I'm not really well learned on this. I just kind of recently become aware of it, but I'm just curious why so many other surrounding cities, localities seem to be able to repeal the food tax. And we seem to think, we're going to have to cut back on so many different, parts of the city, the city employees and other needed, necessary expenses. It seems to me like we could trim the fat a little to cut this down. And I mean, there's just so many people that are struggling with this. Is just, to me, something that I'm really curious why it is that so many other surrounding localities are able to do this and we're not, or we're not willing to do this. I think it's more of a choice. In fact, I'd like to propose that we can do this right now. And I don't think we should put it on a ballot. I don't think we should try to put it up for a vote. I think it should be something that we should just, for the sake of humanity, if you will, and living, quality of life. I think people are being taxed to death in a way. So So I think that's something I'd like to stand up for and speak about, just because I think that we all have tax increases, and it's causing us to have to make hard choices about feeding our children and, very necessary living expenses. So I think if we could just repeal this, and I think we can do it without a ballot initiative, I think you, as council members, have the authority. Am I correct in that or not?
You are correct.
So I think we should just do it. I mean, let's just take a stand for the sake of families that are struggling. So many are. I mean, I'm probably the last one that she would talk about this. I live right on Lake McIntosh. By the way, Lake McIntosh is an area where you could cut expenses.
So,
You really could, because they play. There's a lot of money that's put into supporting the guards and the patrol people that walk around Lake McIntosh, making sure nobody violates the no swimming rules and all the other.
have you, yeah, I was going to say, have you seen the people that have come out
Yeah.
telling us to get people out of the Lake McIntosh?
I'm probably the last person that should really, but just for the sake of because I'm a doctor, and I just think that we can help people, with their needs, because it's better, for their health and safety, and they don't have to pay so many taxes. But I would like to hear from you.
Okay.
Yes.
This is something our council should talk about. I'm going to call on Councilor Rodriguez. Whoops. We'll try him again.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. First of all, I want to ask a quick question. I don't know how many members of council remember, we did have a meeting before a council session with our CFO, Jim Golden, on this subject the last time it came up as far as a ballot initiative that was going around in the public. Was that meeting done in executive session?
I don't think it was.
Okay, so from my recollection of that meeting, we have certain bond assurances that are correlated to this particular tax. Part of our job here as a fiduciary responsibility to the city is to assure that we have a good bond rating. If we start violating bond assurances by repealing a tax that these bond assurances are tied to, could affect our bond rating, which would affect our ability to borrow for capital projects down the road. So that was one of the items that was brought to us on a reason why we shouldn't just summarily repeal this tax, is because we have certain investments that are based on this particular line of income. And if we violate these bond assurances, that would affect and negatively affect our bond rating as a city. And so that was an explanation given to us by our CFO, our chief financial officer for the city. And so that's one reason that the city council did not move on it on our own behalf at that time. And let it go to the petition process. And so that's just one explanation that I don't think has been brought up tonight for folks in the audience, that I don't think they were necessarily privy to in that conversation if they weren't in that particular meeting.
But it is something that the council can bring back and discuss again. But tonight, we're not going to make a motion on it.
So
Yeah.
what would it take for us to put this issue to a vote, or to a
discussion?
Yeah.
It would take us putting on an agenda, and tomorrow morning, I will ask our city manager if we can do that. That's when we discuss what's going to be on our agenda.
So is the answer, if we can do that, is that dependent on what? Like your use all opinions?
It depends upon a majority vote.
It depends on a majority vote. So the majority might vote not to repeal the tax.
I don't have any idea because we haven't discussed it. We need to have another discussion. It's been a while, since 2018 was our last discussion on this. But thank you for bringing it up again. And I do want to let you know that we will never take salaries away from employees.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on.
I think Councilor Martin would like to weigh in on this.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. There are, I think, some facts that the people in the audience here need to know about uses of the general fund. I get a lot of letters, and I respond to every single one, I have occasionally spoken to someone that I failed to respond to. So, it's my intention to respond to every single one, but once in a while I lose one. Nevertheless, I would say way up in the top 5 and maybe the top 1 and 2 requests that I get from the public are code enforcement doesn't do enough and the police don't do enough. We need more. The policy of the city of Longmont is to pay its average employee just a tiny bit. The goal is 1%, but in fact it's less than that, over the statewide average for people in the same job description. So, from the snickers I heard the last time it was mentioned, I think there's some idea that the city staff is overpaid, but the city staff is not overpaid. And so what that means is that if we needed to cut the city staff in order to, for example, untax food, that we would either be letting our employees fall behind employees in adjacent cities, or we would be having fewer of them. And honestly, if they fell very far behind, we would be having fewer of them anyway, because they would be leaving for better wages somewhere else rather than staying here in Longmont. So I want everybody to understand that. And, the last person I asked this question of could not give me an answer. So I'm going to ask it of you. What city services would you like to cut so that we can repeal the food tax?
Well, I don't really have a good grip on that, but I talked to my wife, Debbie, about this today, and she ran a preschool here in Longmont for 14 years, and she said that she has to drive to the Walmart on 119, which is 7 miles from our house, rather than the Walmart on Main Street, which is 2 miles from our house. So I think that people have to shop outside the city and drive to get there, and that leads to more congestion and more traffic, and pollution that way. So I'm not very good at budgeting myself. In fact, I'm horrible at it. I'm the worst person to budget, but I think that there must be ways you could cut some fat. just a little.
Sir, we will
reach
it.
We will discuss that, but I just want to say that cutting the fat is a myth that people who don't like government like to repeat. But if you would like to go and, the city budget is online in excruciating detail, and many years' worth of city budgets are online in excruciating detail. You have a consortium of people, obviously, who want to repeal the food tax. I would challenge you to find the fat and come to Public Invited to be Heard in future meetings and talk about the services that you have found that Longmont doesn't need.
Sir, I want to thank you very much for bringing this up. The council will discuss it.
Thank you for your time.
You're
tonight.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Karen, is Karen here?
Karen Yagi.
Yagi. Oh, okay.
Yes, I know it's a strange name.
No, it's fine. I just didn't know how to pronounce it.
No, that's all right. I don't want to.
What is your address?
It's 916 Corey Street here in Longmont.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me. This was a bit of an impulsive move on my part to come tonight.
That's great.
I'm trying to understand Longmont, but I have been a 40-year resident in Longmont, and I grew up wanting to be part of the solution. So one, I want to thank you because I know that the job that you are doing is not easy, and it's balancing these forces between so many things. But I wanted to be part of the solution. So my ask tonight, I'm going to start with that, is just one, to raise awareness of a nonprofit that I have started that's called Community Connections Project of Longmont. We are located on Mountain View in Main Street. And I have I'm going to read something for you here, just a second. So CCP Longmont offers educational and social programs focused on skill building and leadership in the community. We are building alliances with other organizations and developing programs that encourage participants to get involved in the community in both large, as in civic engagement, and small ways, completing a puzzle or playing a board game. Our current focus is on building out our schedule of class offerings at our community center and developing our gardening and farming program. We see ourselves as a support to schools and local businesses, and we want our resources to lend a hand to those who might not otherwise have opportunity or purpose. So I just would like for you to, again, to be aware of what we're doing. I have a huge support network, people cheering me on, but right now I am a staff of one. So, but we have 10 acres that's north of town that we're developing into a working farm. We would like to put a farmer's market in front of our building. I rent a Tebow building, the big blue building, for the community center. And I'd like to solicit your support as you are balancing these tensions between urban and agricultural. And the food security thing is very near and dear to me too. I also own a hydroponic lettuce and microgreen business.
Oh, cool.
And so, I failed to say, I'm a retired school teacher. So my initial thing with the community center was to have kids come and have a place to go so they're not just wandering. And then out of that, I'm used to working, here's my visual. I'm used to working in schools, where you have a 600 people population. And so these are the focus areas. When people get tired of playing board games and ping pong, then can they engage in these larger questions of what does it mean to, what is permaculture? Ben and I have an alliance, so I'm developing these alliances with people and then trying to get kids and people involved. And so right now I have people that are coming in, the homeless community comes in. So, and I'm also an owner of 6 properties, so affordable housing is again important to me. How can we make all this work? So I applaud all of the things that you do. My last ask is simply, what advice would you have for somebody like me now who is trying, I've been so busy focused on what I've been doing, and now I'm trying to reach out and let people know I exist, trying to get the funding so that I'm not just self-funding this. What advice do you have for me to understand what is going on in the city that I need to be aware of when I can't sit on all these task forces and there's no more of me left to advise in for things. So just what advice do you have for me?
My first advice would be, first of all, thank you for what you're doing. It sounds very interesting. My first advice would be to contact the Chamber of Commerce for getting your name out, join the Chamber of Commerce. Are you going to be doing, as we've heard from the other people here, any soil sequestration or rejuvenation? And
Yes.
well, that answers
Yes.
some questions.
Yes,
That's
and
great.
and our property, we have, I have kids coming out, taking baseline soil samples, wanting to develop alliances with CSU to make that, and I'm working on those next level alliances of how do we move forward into the 21st century, thinking that 7th generation out.
And I also think a good contact would be the food share group. And let's see.
Do you need funding also?
I do need funding.
How about the Long
I
Island
do.
Community Foundation?
I just applied and I'm waiting for an answer.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, yes. Thank you.
Councilor Yarbrough would like to talk to you as well. Whoops, I keep turning that off. But she has talked a couple of times, so I want to give you the chance.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all that your endeavors, your initiative. I I just want to say, I was going to say the Longmont Community Foundation as well. One thing you can do, if it fits, March the 30th at the fairgrounds, we're going to have a life skills fair, and the City of Longmont Youth and Family Services will be putting that on. And so if there's something that I know CSU will be there as well. Kids, I think from 11 to 17 will learn how to change a tire. I know some of the adults told me they want to be there for that too. But but for the life skills, I know you were talking about skill building. So if that's an opportunity, something that you can think of, and you're already working with kids, or these may be a little bit older, something that you want to ingrain in them, moving forward, some type of skill that they can think about, implement in their everyday life. That would be a great opportunity. So I would talk to Hilda at the Children, Youth, and Family Services and talk to them about how you can participate, and you can tell them that you came here for the open forum and I suggested that you contacted them.
Okay.
Anything that we can do to provide more information and education to our youth is very important for our community. So thanks again for all that you all are doing out here, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
One more thing before I call on Councillor Martin is that you might contact Kenna and Mark Guttridge of Olin Farms. They're very well connected with the local farmers, and they also hire interns in the summer to do exactly what you want to do. So perhaps learning what's working for them and what is not would be a good place to start. Councillor Martin.
Yes, and I really will keep this short. I just wanted to thank you as well and elevate the two things that we all didn't emphasize, but that I think are really important. You mentioned civic engagement and a better understanding of how that works, and also giving children a way to participate in the community. And I would say that those are two of my very top, right behind housing, those are two of my very top priorities. So thank you for such a brilliant idea, because I think that it's so interesting that it's going to do both of those things. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So the next five, Kim Edmondson. Dennis. Oh, come on up. Sorry. Prudence.
Prudence, that's the hardest first name maybe. But the last name is Carter.
Carter, that's what I couldn't
C-A-R-T-R.
read.
I used to say like the president, but people really don't know the presidents nowadays.
And your address too, please.
641 Kenmore Court,
Thank you.
Longmont, 80501. First, I want to thank the mayor and the council for having this open forum. I think it's a great idea. It probably should be done monthly, but, you know, that would be enough. One of the things I want to say was that I learned a lot tonight, especially about housing. But what I'm going to talk about tonight is kind of what the role of the city government is, what you're all taking on, which is a lot, and failure of all the propositions that failed, as well as Prop HH. So when I think of the city government, I think of roads, streets, bridges, next light, managing water, electricity, wastewater, trash. I think of zoning, permitting, residential, commercial, police and fire and safety services, Longmont Safety and Justice, which is limited only to municipal code violations, I understand, code enforcement, human resources, finance for the cities, as well as for internal employees. So when I think of all that, and then I think that the city's going to take on housing, and I learned a lot about housing from one of the speakers, recreational services. I always think one should outsource golf so we could make money. Library services, of course, I want a library district. I would talk about open space, but there's really kind of none left. It's kind of all paved over. I also want to talk a little bit about sustainability. One of the things I've noticed, especially because I've traveled around the state, is many city buildings either have heat pumps. There's an excellent article in the Wall Street Journal today, page A3, which will explain what a heat pump is and how they all work. Solar energy, passive solar, lots of trees being planted. And I kind of don't see that happening in Longmont, that the city buildings have not become sustainable, unless I'm missing it. So please feel free to, correct me. And then about the failure of all the propositions by resounding margins, I wondered strategically, what was the thought process about putting all three on the ballot at once, as well as Proposition HH, which the state was doing? So that, to me, I knew that they were going to fail. So I wasn't sure what the strategic plan was there. Also, I know back in 2023, the governor passed that local governments can give temporary property tax credits or mill levy reductions, and I'm wondering if the council is considering that. I also want to talk a little bit about taxing groceries. I agree with two speakers prior to me who, the young woman who read off her grocery bill, and the physician who spoke. I think that the tax affects the most vulnerable of the population, which are seniors. As you know, the senior population is growing here, as well as the working poor. I know that you can go online and get this form to fill out to get your tax rebate. I can tell you, having worked with people in Medicaid, this is not something that is easy. It's easy for me to do. I can go online. I have the computer. I can fill out a form. But if you're poor, you have 3 kids, and you're in a single-parent home, it's not that easy. So it's great having a form. However, I don't really think it's doable for folks. I know Councilperson Martin has said, what would you cut out? That's really the job of the council. I know that the Boulder County Commissioners recently slashed 18% of Health and Human Services because they looked and saw there were duplication of services. So I don't think it's up to the public to say, what don't we want? I think it's the job of the council to do that. There we go.
There you go. That was a lot.
I know, but I kept within my 5 minutes. How do you like that? I used the public speaking.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Well, I'm not going to hit on all those. The thing is that we have a budget process every fall to go through and to try to figure out, where we want to go as a community, and we have these open forums not this type of open forum, but we have our, times for public to chime in on those topics and let us know, do people feel like there are spots there to help hone us as a council into, identifying maybe where there might be spots of duplication and that type of thing. I think the community tries really hard, our staff and our council here tries really hard not to have many duplications. Maybe somewhere as large as Boulder County where you might have many entities you're trying to, give services to, you might find later that there's a lot of overlap there, and that would make some sense. But we're pretty compact here, and we can kind of see where we're spending the money. And part of the issue is just we want to make sure that the services that we provide people are the quality that they have an expectation for.
Sure.
And so we want our roads to not have potholes, and we don't. We want our water to run, those, right? And we want our sewer to go away, not come back. Those sort of things like that. These are good things. So those things all have grown in expense over the couple of years, especially after the pandemic. Things are sometimes more difficult to find. I think of a business here in town at Premier Members. They've had their drive-through down for literally 6 months on Airport Road because they can't seem to find the part, get somebody to get the part to fix the pneumatic tube system there. So it's things like that. That's everywhere. And so that's what we're dealing with as well. And so, sometimes oftentimes when we look and think that things have simple solutions, that's probably the wrong side.
Right.
If we're looking at things because, when people give simple solutions to complex problems, they usually probably don't always, have a deep understanding of what's going on. The council really tries to have a deep understanding of what's going on. We've got, folks that think that we could, pack people in like sardines, and former council member Christensen comes forward and points out, some of the obvious things. It's pretty naive to assume that you're going to be, breaking houses into duplexes and things like that. I mean, I think we're trying to come up with some ideas. We've got some commercial properties that are sitting vacant, but, some of these issues have to be solved at the legislative level that gives us the green light to conduct our business here. So that's some of the problems that we're dealing with. We're trying to do the best for the community and be good stewards when it comes down to some of these major issues. And, you can't always build your way out of these problems.
That's right. And I have to say, I keep hearing the word task force, and I have to say, I think of task forces, unless there's a time limit on them and there's a goal, 3 months, that's it. Like not 2 years of task force. Like sometimes I read this and I say to myself, well, no wonder nothing gets done. And I think that there's a change in that in our personal lives, things move very quickly. And what the expectation is, and I can tell you from having two children, they want things fast. And they're in their, late 30s. They're like, why doesn't it move any faster?
So just kind of my background, I teach U.S. government students, and I always say to them, when people try to suggest that your government should operate like a business, they've missed the complexity of government and the transparency of government, and they simply don't. Maybe they need some remuneration in regards to what's going on with that, because the truth is that government, does go slow on purpose to make sure that all stakeholders have some input. And otherwise, if you're a business owner, you can be a dictator of all kinds of things that go on with your business.
Right, you could be a dictator of 10 and be great.
Yeah,
Right,
and
yeah.
it sure is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, well, I don't think that answered any of your questions.
No, it didn't.
But,
But I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I appreciate,
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up tonight.
Thank you.
And I want to say for the online forms, I'm sure that if someone really can't get in we would definitely print it off for them. And I personally, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, wouldn't mind taking a form to someone if they really feel that they can't get in to get it or fill it out. I would be happy to do that.
It's just a whole, it's a whole thing. It's another, coming from a poor family,
Yeah,
your life is chaotic.
yep,
As, that's how I was raised. It was chaos all the time.
yep.
So it's hard to do. Thank you.
We can find workarounds.
Okay.
Now I can pull up the next 5. Kim Edmondson, Denise Sevenson, Lisa Crawford, Doe Kelly, and Tess Enright. And don't forget to give us your address, please.
Do you want me to start?
Sure, Kim.
I'm Kim Edmondson at 814 Bittersweet Lane. And as usual, I'm here to talk about your lovely smart meters that I don't feel that we really need. And all of that. And I know Marcia has been giving me a lot of flack online and all over social media about my science. And so I dug up my radiation physics book from the radiology program, and I read a little bit about, like, well, maybe I forgot something wrong. Maybe I need to reread it about ionizing radiation. Produces damage in living systems by ionizing and removing electrons from the atoms, compromising the molecular structure of these systems. Biological damage then begins with ionization produced by various types of radiation. An ionized atom will not bond properly into molecules necessary for normal function of an organism. That's that. And then I came across some more recent information about EMFs. And at its core, it basically reads the same thing. When your atoms are knocked out of place, it destabilizes, and this allows the cell to be damaged and DNA damage to occur. Basically, at its core, at an atomic level, ionizing and non-ionizing radiation are the same thing, despite someone arguing with me for years about this. And so I wanted to just bring that up again, that I don't feel that these meters are safe. Myself and other members of this community who've been speaking to you for like 3 to 4 years now are the canaries in the radiation coal mine. We're here to say this is a problem. It is making us sick. I recently had to be on amoxicillin for an infected tooth that needed to be pulled. And my body's biome got so jacked up from that, I got this full body heat rash. It was miserable, itchy, nothing helped, nothing touched it. And then I thought, well, I had high levels of mold on my test with my functional doctor. I went and shut off our Wi-Fi router, and within 30 minutes, my rash started to disappear after 4 days of suffering. I can't imagine what kind of hell that would have been if there'd been a damn meter on the side of my house that I couldn't shut off or power down. And that really disturbs me, that despite people like me speaking, you're going ahead and you're not giving people the option to keep an analog meter or to get an analog meter. You're just like, it's either this or that. And believe me, I've been around and we've measured your new meters. And someone in their one meeting said, well, they only send about every 15 minutes. No, those Hummers pulse about every 10 seconds, sending their RF signal about every 10 seconds. We've measured it, we have it on film. So don't sit there and keep lying to the community about how safe these things are. And I know it's great, we're talking about all the sustainability stuff with the farming and agriculture. I'm down with that, but when I see things like in the news, San Luis Valley, I know it's down the road, it's not here, but there was a rancher with 1,500 head of cattle or so, grazing about 89,000 acres. He had a lease, it expired. His grazing lease was outbid by Nature Conservancy to preserve what, for birds? So there goes the regenerative soil stuff with the grazing. That's gone out the window. So much for that carbon sink in the San Luis Valley. And then there's the other thing about, we need food supply locally. I agree with that 100%, but, if we go putting these meters on, it's going to decimate the pollinators. It already is. I have something I wanted to read here about that as well. If I can find it. Got a lot of stuff in here marked. And anyway, here, the magnetite in the intestinal tract of bees, when aligned with the Earth magnetic grid, allows bees to find their way back to hives. However, this incredible increase of ambient cell phone radiation prevents the magnetite from aligning correctly with Earth's magnetic grid, so the bees get disoriented, never making it back to the hive. The result of this is that the bee populations are rapidly diminishing. That's one of many factors. And what's going to happen when we start putting smart meters on every building in this community, our pollinators are going to be gone. And we've brought this up, and we keep telling you that. And then there's the whole thing with the food. I know our food bill sucks. My husband's always looking at the credit card bill. Why is it so high? And then he breaks it up in a grid, and like 80% of our bill on our credit card is food, just food. I've scaled back on so many other things I'm not buying, doing without, so I can feed my kids. And I agree. You can go ahead and voice smart meters on us without a vote, without asking anyone, just by your will. Why can't you just by your will remove this? And I know Aaron touched on this. And you're like, well, what are we supposed to cut? Hey, why don't you cut your smart grid? You just had recently posted a position for someone to design your grid for $200,000 a year. Do we really need that guy? Do we really need Lisa Knobloch on the Sustainability Advisory Board? Can't those people figure out a little bit on their own without a college degree sustainability person leading the way and getting a monthly paycheck from the city? I mean, if I were to cut pork, I would cut your sustainability board and all of that and focus on taking care of your citizens here, now, today. Because you're not doing anyone favors. And the WF, they're at their last meeting in Davos, because you guys are all about following that, they're like, let's work on rebuilding trust. And you can do that by getting rid of this food tax.
or whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
The Sustainability Board does not get paid.
What about the guy designing your grid? $200,000 a year.
Thank you, Kim. Is there, I see no one in the queue, so we'll go to Denise. Or-
People came up, they're just not sitting at the table.
Oh, we're just here.
I know. Is Denise here? Or is it? Okay, then we'll go on to Lisa. Lisa Crawford? Not here? Doe Kelly?
Whoa. Okay. Well, that's a hard intensity to follow. I know that I share some of that intensity being an electrosensitive person myself, that coming into this auditorium or this, whatever it is, the council chambers, is to a degree difficult. I've measured it. I know how it feels. I am much better than I was when the Next Light first came into my living room in 2016 with the wireless router that tipped me into electrosensitivity, that really began this whole conversation about smart meters and microwave radiation and non-ionizing versus ionizing radiation. So first of all, I want to say that I stand with Dr. Monsieur Joe Montante on his perspective on the food sales tax and repealing it. And also I applaud everybody here who's mentioning life-based approaches to sustainability in agriculture, and I think that's all very wonderful. It brings me back to the bees. It brings me back to this whole idea of electrification and of the smart grid and the smart meters. And I wanted to inform people here, not just City Council, but everybody, that there's a lot of bills going on in Washington, D.C., and I know that Mayor Peck, I reached out to you last summer about 3557. But they keep proceeding along, and some of them get passed, some of them don't, or some of them don't make it out of committee. But there is one that is an HR 6492 that now, it's another preemption of local control over the siting of cellular infrastructure and towers. And this particular HR 6492 wants the ability to put cellular infrastructure in all of our national parks and national lands. And those of us who we're not only concerned about the pollinators, the bees, the wildlife, the humans. First of all, going to the national parks is a refuge for some people who are terribly sensitive to the microwave radiation that is everywhere and ubiquitous in our environment. But the cellular infrastructure are known fire hazards, and that includes not only cell towers, but smart meters, and sometimes smart meters inclusive on those cell towers. And we know right now that there's a lawsuit against Excel for the Marshall Fire for at least being partially responsible for that. So I wanted to inform people here that there are bills in New Hampshire being introduced on the health effects of 5G technology, that New Hampshire had a commission to study 5G technology, and that included the study of smart meters, included a discussion about ionizing, non-ionizing radiation. It included bringing in a lot of really fine experts, and they came out with a stellar report, and this was in 2020, and now they've come along with a bill on the health effects of 5G. Massachusetts has wireless safety bills in front of its legislature also that aim to protect residents against wireless health and environmental risks. And of course, I'm here to lobby to say that we have an environmental risk with the smart meter program and pushing towards the smart grid and Internet of Things, Internet of Bodies, Internet of Underwater Things, and all of those Internet of Things that when the bees die, as Susie said a minute ago, when certain things die, we all die. But when the bees die, then we don't have a whole lot of time left unless they get all of the drone bees to do the pollinating work that our bees are already doing. So let me see. I have a lot of words here. For those unfamiliar with ionizing, non-ionizing radiation, X-rays, gamma rays, and ultraviolet rays are ionizing, but weaker fields like microwave radiation, and that's what's up for discussion here, or what smart meters and cell phones and cell towers and baby monitors are all putting out, that there's an awful lot of science that says that it is unsafe. And now as we move into millimeter waves in 5G, that is into another arena entirely that is problematic. So there's some questions that I would just want to ask is about the smart meters. Would Longmont set up a health reporting system and disseminate it widely to the residents so that in the event a resident has an adverse effect from a smart or a digital meter, they can report it to the city and have the meter removed and replaced with an electromechanical analog meter? And if not, why not? And one other thing that I think is really important has to do with LED lighting in the city, and that goes along with everything: electrification, smart, sustainable, but this is not life-based. There is now a lawsuit that's being pursued against the FDA for not regulating LED lighting against the harms that is providing for our eyes. And if you drive at night, you will know what I mean when 2/3 of the vehicles out there have LED headlights and you're blinded by them. So I'd like Longmont to be looking into these things, into the LEDs, for one, and also the idea of a program of accountability to the city if people report adverse health effects when they get a smart meter or a digital opt-out meter onto their homes.
Good idea. So, Councillor Hidalgo-Ferring.
Thank you for your comments. This is something I'm, learning along the way. The smart meter initiation happened just as I was onboarding onto council, so it was already a process. It was already. However, in a couple of months, we're going to the National League of Cities Conference. So I'm a member of several groups, HELO, the Hispanic Elected Officials Organization, Education for Youth and Families is another organization that I'm a part of, and Sustainability and Resilience. In ongoing conversations that I've had just virtually, and I intend to further, I want to know what's happening as far as what are other cities finding. The last time I was there, the feedback I got from other municipality and local leaders in this area was that they were not experiencing a whole lot. And so, and as time progresses, we can delve deeper and see, really take a holistic look and looking at what the long-term impacts are. I don't deny that you are experiencing these things. And I know other people who have. I have relatives who have experiences, sensitivities. And so again, it's coming back to that balance, but also in safeguarding our community as well. So, this is something I'm looking at seriously. And, I want to get other input from what other municipalities are doing for residents who are experiencing sensitivity, and how we can, continue with the program in some means, but while still safeguarding others. And then looking at the impacts to nature and the environment as well. So, it's a learning process, and I'm still learning a lot. I'm not as well-versed on this and studying this as long as you have.
Yeah.
But, I want you to know that we are taking it seriously.
Oh, I believe you. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for what you're doing to try and sort it out, and the time that you spend looking into it as well, and asking and talking with people about it. I mean, while people are mentioning task force, why not a task force on EMF in this city? So, yeah. Here it is.
Tess Enright.
Good evening. I'm Tess Enright. I live at 9 Cornell Drive.
Sorry.
I already lost my time.
That
It's
was
over.
my bad. You're done.
Dose time is up.
So I really just wanted to come in to, out of curiosity, to have a conversation about the transportation options for people that commute to downtown Denver. So I work in downtown Denver. I live in Longmont. I moved back here about 7 years ago. And prior to 2020, there was options for us. There was an express line that used to take us to Union Station. That bus went away during 2020, has not been brought back. The option that we have is the LD1 and LD3. There are only 2 times per day when it goes to Union Station and 2 when it leaves Union Station to come back. So there's really not a lot of options. And I don't know, there's 3 people alone in my department at work that live in Longmont. And so there's just a lot of discussion. The commute has become increasingly more difficult. It's really congested. There's a lot of people moving up here, which I understand they're trying to get out of Denver. I did myself. I moved out of Denver and I moved back up here. So I'm just curious if the conversations you guys have had with RTD related to the train, the light rail, I know that that's something we all wish was here. We all hope that it will be here one day. If there's been any discussions about possibly bringing back maybe the express line or adding additional routes to Union Station, because I know I'm not the only one who commutes to downtown Denver from Longmont. So
You've hit on a sore spot with me as well. Very sore. Yes, that express line was supposed to come back with some of the ARPA money that has not come to our region the way it was supposed to. This is not RTD's fault. I have been to RTD, to their public invited to be heard, and yelled at them about this. What happened to our LX1? How come we don't have it? I don't accept their answer.
what is their answer?
Their answer basically is that they've restored the FF buses on US 36. But those don't come to Longmont unless.
The ones that leave from Table Mesa?
Yes.
Okay.
Or from Broomfield,
Okay.
from those stops. But yes, I used to take that bus quite often as well. So do you mind if I just hang on to your name if you want to go yell with me at RTD? I would love to have a
I'm not much of a
companion.
yeller, but sure, I will be another person there.
That
I know
would be great.
someone has said that that's the route for us to take, is to drive to Table Mesa and catch a bus there, but
You can't, it doesn't run.
it doesn't really help.
No, it makes it a very long day.
It does, yeah. I mean, the
So-
commute right now is an hour and 15 minutes, one way. And
One
it's
way, exactly.
One way. It's difficult, but I love my job, and I love where I live, so I don't really want to give up either, but one of the reasons I moved up here is I had that option, and now it's gone away, so whatever options are available, or if any pressure or leverage can be placed, because, there's really nothing else.
So if you would give your email address to Michelle at the end.
Okay.
And I will email you the next time I go down.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, bring anybody else that you think would like to help. Do we need a bio break up here? Let's take a 5-minute break. get back in session.
I know, I came down here tonight, like, oh my God.
The next people on the list are Greg Morrissey, Greg Jensen, Gordon Pedro, Gary Hodges, and Dan Sorrell. You must be Greg Morrissey.
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Greg Morrissey. I live at 1648 Harvard Street here in Longmont. And thank you for having this evening. And what I'd like to do, I have brought some pictures to show you because I'm in Ward number 3.
Okay.
And can I share these pictures? It's a little bit gross, but you'll understand why, okay?
Sure. Thank you. A little gross.
Porta potties, that's correct. I heard the word porta potties. These are in Dawson Park, right there in, on the east end of Lake McIntosh. And I called last week the Parks Department and said, hey, these things are full. They're overflowing, needs to be cleaned. And I left them my name, left them my number, never heard anything back. So I went back down again today. There was a people coming there, running around the lake, had to go to the bathroom, open the door. I'm not going to use that, and backed out. So I'd like to know, is it under a city contract that has those porta potties run? And are there more porta potties in different places around the city? Are they in the same state? I mean, are they in the same, they're not being maintained or clipped or cleaned? Because there's both of those. There's one's a big one for a person who is perhaps on a wheelchair and just run a regular one, and they're both the same. They're full, and it's been that way for quite a while, and they stink.
Okay, you just turned on. Counselor Hidalgo Ferry.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yes.
So I handled one back, it was at Car Park over on Gay, near Gay and 21st, several months ago. And we contract those porta potties. So the company is supposed to be coming out to clean those out or exchange them out. And I don't see David Bell. Did he leave? He left, okay. So, but he was the person that I contacted, and he was able to help us remedy that. So, I have your information. I will contact him, and we'll get that taken care of. I know once we handled it with the car park, we were able to remedy it pretty quick. But again, if they're not coming out regularly,
So do I contact you, or they've got a phone number on the side of it? Do I give them a call and say, I'm with the...
There is a phone number on the side, but I feel like when I contacted our city people, and I don't know if Harold's coming down or, never mind. I was able to contact David Bell, and he was able to help, get that going faster.
Yeah.
Than
I just think
just
we're going
calling the
faster,
number.
And there's other places in the city you've got them. They should
Yes.
be coming on a regular basis, doing their cleaning, replacing them, and maintenance, et cetera.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I agree. Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't have the number off the top of my head.
I know, I
but,
don't have the number.
On our website, call the Parks Department
I did.
and let them know, and then they'll
I
get
did
it.
that on Tuesday. They took my name and information. They're going to get back to me. And I said, these things are bad. And then I went down there today. No one's done anything.
So we'll look at that. I will say one of the challenges we're having with those is that sometimes they do go in and clean them, and then very quickly they're in the same
They're dirty
shape.
again.
So,
Yeah, okay.
But I will definitely talk to Parks about that. And
Yeah, because
that looks fine.
that lady who was coming around the park when I was there, she had to go to the bathroom. She opened the door. I can't
Yeah.
go in there. Yeah, so.
No, okay, well, yeah, and thank you for bringing that to our attention, because then we can kind of go above and make sure that it gets done quicker.
On a basis?
On a
Yeah,
regular basis. I mean, maybe it just needs to be changed out a lot sooner.
I'm just curious, how's the contract written? They're supposed to come out weekly and check them or something like that, or?
Yeah.
And I think the contractor should also be telling us when they clean it, keeping a record.
Correct.
So that will tell us if they did and how often it gets like this.
Okay, thank you.
So Harold
They were
has,
there today. David just told me that they were there today
okay.
cleaning those.
Well, I was there this afternoon. No, they weren't. I checked this afternoon before I came here.
We'll follow up with the contractor. I'll let.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Wow, you're our watchdog. Thank you so much.
I thank you for doing that, but they stink.
Oh,
Let's tell you.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. Greg Jensen.
Do you want your pictures back?
I'm sorry.
Nope, that was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it turn red. There is one more thing about the porta potties, because I've handled a few of those myself. I think Susie's information was later than mine, but the same thing. There's not a competitor, so it's hard for us to threaten them with canceling their contract. Anybody want to start a business?
Okay, we're having way too much fun up here. Let's get serious. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Mayor Peck, members of the council. What I'd like to read from tonight is...
Would you, Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you mind giving us your address?
Yes, 1318 Grace Peak Drive,
Thank you.
80504. I'd like to discuss something that's been kind of swept under the rug for a number of years, and we're finally getting some statistics. I won't go into detailing all the statistics. They're all documented, and I have these documented in front of me. This is from the summary of election fraud from 2020 presidential election. And I want to start with a quote that says, "That which was originally void does not, by lapse of time, become valid." So from the state of Georgia, Georgia was called by 11,797 votes. Not a single ballot purportedly cast during the early person voting was witnessed to and signed off by poll managers as required by the Georgia election rules. Seals were broken, memory cards were removed from tabulators as a result of these 315,000 votes, which were printed out on different machines than the ones that tabulated them. This prevented the reconciliation of how many votes were actually cast on each machine. The reason I bring this up, but this is a county issue. Fulton County did not count the same ballots during the original count and the machine recount. Of the 19,504 district ballots that appear on one machine, they did not appear on another machine. Remember, 11,779 votes. There was 19,541 votes in question. 88% of Fulton County's precincts reported a different total number of votes between the first and second machine counts. 90%, 9 of 10, approximately 148,000 absentee ballots cast in Fulton County cannot be authenticated. Ballot images for 132,284 mail-in ballots have no .sha file, which are created automatically when the ballot is scanned and used to authenticate the digital image of the vote, lacking evidence that they were scanned and tabulated properly or even cast by a real voter. None of the 315,000 votes cast during the early voting in Fulton County were witnessed to and signed by the poll manager and 2 poll workers, as required by state election rules. The closing tapes for these votes were all unsigned, showed more tabulated votes than tabulators had recorded as scanned in their predictive counters, and recorded in probably low percentages for President Trump. For example, President Trump received only 0.9% 2.4%, 3.7% from some of the tabulators, as if he was a third-party candidate or a third world country. The anomalies indicate ballots were not scanned on the tabulators that printed the closing tapes, making the closing tapes fraudulent. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan, which all had very similar things that took place. So since this is a county issue and Longmont is a subset of a county, I'd like to know from the city council, and I know that you don't have jurisdiction because this goes to state election laws, how is it, knowing the anomalies that took place, how is it that a citizen of any municipality, any state, any jurisdiction whatsoever can have any confidence that any elected official was actually sitting in a spot that was legitimately gotten by an actual vote cast by an actual person? Since all politics are local, and I will say this in closing, I have documented evidence from a postal worker in the state of in the city of Longmont who told a Rob Brandenburg, who owns Grandpa's Guns, that a Longmont postal worker confessed to him that he delivered 100 mail-in ballots to a single residence, a single address. So we want to pretend like this, well, none of this could happen in Colorado. I mean, you must be crazy to think that there must be something off with our balloting systems. I'd like to know from the city council, how is it that you can assure me or any of the voters sitting in this place that any person sitting in a position of power had actually gotten there legitimately?
Councillor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. This is the whole thing. This is the game plan. This is the concept of spreading doubt. This idea that you're trying to formulate here that somehow there was some sort of nefarious thing, and that just didn't happen. There were legal cases on this, and it just didn't happen. You're trying to, in a very volatile election season, trying to gin up the idea of some sort of illegal behavior. And it's just not, it isn't happening, it didn't happen. The courts found it not to have happened. You're trying to make this into something it's not. And I'm sad to hear that, because there's always somebody trying to make it into something, twist things into something that it really isn't happening. And so, then you're trying to spread doubt on everybody here about the possibility of, how they got elected. And if somebody is there, bring them forward. Bring them on forward. Our chief of police would like to have a conversation with them, and this mail delivery individual, and make sure that we have this thing cleared up, because it's just not happening. And it's just this idea, if we can continue to have doubt in our system, then we can go ahead and have people that have no business being on the ballot. And that's what we're dealing with here. This is it's an old game plan. It's an old from an old playbook. It was used in the cigarette and the tobacco industry to spread doubt that, well, maybe cigarettes didn't create cancer. And now we've heard it, well, maybe climate change really isn't done by, has any impact by humans or other things like that. So this is constant railing at the idea of, if we can spread enough doubt, people will go along with it. So, this QAnon sort of conspiracy theory stuff just is not resonating with me, and really isn't resonating with the American public.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, I'm not ridiculing people this evening. I didn't ridicule the EMF people. And the people who know me realize how much restraint that took. But I will tell you that there is an actual answer to the question raised by this gentleman. And that is closer to the election. Go down to Boulder County elections. Every year, I can't remember her title, director, anyway, the woman in charge, is usually a woman, of elections, holds a tour and an explanation of how ballots are verified in this county. And in fact, one of the things that you will learn is that because the voter rolls were not cleaned properly, and a lot of, there are residences that turn over every year. And so if a lot of ballots were delivered to the same address, either because the postal worker was being irresponsible or because there were a lot of registered voters that had at one time or another actually occupied that address, only the current occupants would be able to cast their ballots and have them accepted. And there are two things. I was an election judge for 5 elections, I think, and then I got elected to city council and didn't do it anymore. But I was an election judge for 5 elections, and every year they train us on the processes that are required to make sure that in Boulder County and in Colorado, elections are secure. And they, it was a number of years ago now. Now you have to have a person who is a registered Democrat, a registered Republican, and an unaffiliated election judge supervise every time a paper ballot moves from one place to the other. And in fact, no ballots are counted except if they are on a valid serialized paper ballot, or in the case of the few voting machines that we do have that are used by people who have either mobility or visual impairments and can't fill out a paper ballot, there is a paper ticket to match every vote that is cast by a voting machine, and those have to be matched up by that 3-person team of election judges who have sworn that they are not going to allow the falsification of any ballot. So I'm also a systems engineer. What that means is a person whose career specialty is in processes, accounting for the audit trail behind stuff. And I will swear to you personally that I could not find a way to falsify a ballot in the city of Colorado.
Who's number 6? Councilor Christ.
I too have worked elections, probably 10 years worth. So I think maybe about 14 different elections. That's down at the county. The woman who holds the tours is Molly Fitzpatrick, the county clerk. Sometimes she has an assignee. So if you'd like to go take a tour, that's great. I think our voting is such an important freedom that it's something that we have to remain diligent. And we should always ask the question, was this a fair election? Did we do everything to create a fair election? And I think that happens more often than not. But there's always going to be 1 or 2 persons that we turn over to the DA who, for some reason, did something hinky. And then it goes, the county DA handles that. So do your due diligence. Go down, watch the process, become a part of the process. And I think everyone should make it a priority that we have safe, fair, and open elections. And thank you for bringing that today.
Welcome.
Yes, thanks, Greg. But I have to say that your story about the 100 ballots, that is third-party, at this point, gossip, and that mailman should have gone directly to the county and reported it.
I believe that he did.
So thank you, and
Yeah. This,
thank you.
it's all
The-
it's all fantasy.
The next one is Gordon Pedro.
It's all fantasy.
Mayor and Council, Gordon Pedro, 2639 Falcon Drive, Longmont. And since I don't have 5 minutes worth of speaking, I'm going to say thank you for having this forum tonight. I think that you have gotten a wide variety of interests. I understand that your February retreat agenda has time for you to debrief the 3 ballot measures that were soundly defeated by your voters in November. I would like to share a few thoughts for your consideration during that debrief. I will confine my remarks tonight to what I believe has been and is a critical need for the community, an additional recreation center. By an additional recreation center, I'm referring to a modern, enhanced version of the one at Quail Campus. I find it most unfortunate that city councils in 2019 and again in 2023 asked Longmont residents to vote to approve authority to construct and operate an additional recreation center, and each time the issue was defeated by over 60% of the votes. One might take these results to mean residents do not support an additional recreation center. I believe these defeats mean our residents are smart and only vote for issues that meet real community needs at a scale they can afford. They do not vote for every expensive want that appears on a ballot. I think most Longmont residents will support bonds to construct an appropriate, focused, and scaled recreation center. I hope your retreat, you realistically explore how to place before the voters a standalone, single ballot issue approving bonds to construct an additional recreation center. Please do it soon. Don't wait another 4 years. In my opinion, an additional recreation center is among the community's most pressing needs. It is not a want. I have heard most city council members of you say that the youth of our community is the future. Young people, the elderly, and all ages in between need a safe, uncrowded place to recreate. It might be easy as a council member to think the best approach to multiple community needs and wants is to put several issues before the voters and let them decide what to support. I believe there's a fatal flaw in this shotgun approach. It is unfocused and it fails to prioritize community needs. And it often leads to failed ballot issues. Residents elect you to allocate the community's scarce resources. They expect you to seek input from boards and commissions, friends, constituents, and staff experts. And then they expect you to appropriate the priorities for the community. I believe in the lack of focus by the city council on priorities and scale is why voters turned down the 3 ballot issues in 2023 and twice within 4 years rejected ballot issues for an additional recreation center. I hope you will engage with your residents and establish a Plan B for an additional recreation center in Longmont. And as I've listened tonight, I wanted to make a couple comments just very briefly. On affordable housing, I hope you don't forget that affordable housing has a lack of income component. So you're talking about minimum wages, or you will be. I think that supporting minimum wages is one of the ways of dealing with the other component of the lack of affordable housing. And I just wanted to mention, I was concerned about so many comments from the city council tonight talking as if the legislature was going to be providing you a solution to affordable housing. You are a home rule city that has all the powers that you need to deal with most every issue about affordable housing that was discussed tonight. And I encourage you to take that approach. So.
I believe that there are two issues that everybody needs to understand that are blocking some of the initiatives that the city would like to take care of with regard to affordable housing. And they are a non-functional construction defects statute that makes it too expensive for the city or any private developer to invest in building condominiums. Now I'm drawing a blank on the second one. And homeowners associations. If 20% of the single-family homes in Longmont built ADUs, we wouldn't have a shortage of housing. And that's something else that the home rule city has no jurisdiction over, is the prohibitions that home rule cities do. So let's keep that in mind, and not forget that there are reasons for a city to lobby the state legislature.
I agree, but I just didn't see that most of what was proposed last year and that the governor is pushing has to do with home HOAs or things like that. They had to do with taking away the local control, and I think that that is a mistake if you support that type of approach.
I agree with not supporting taking away home rule, but the reason I mentioned the legislative bills that might be coming down is the dollars behind them that would help developers and Longmont Housing Authorities build what we need. And that is part of the discussions as the land use bill 213 has been divided into 3 different parts. And one of them is about ADUs and construction defects, et cetera. We want to see if there are any dollars behind that, any grants behind that, anything to help us build it or to help developers with tax credits, et cetera.
Just get a lot of money if you're going to give up your home rule powers. That's all I say.
We're not giving up home rule, Gordon.
Okay.
Thank you. Gary Hodges.
Thank you, Gary Hodges, 2148 Stewart Street. Appreciate the opportunity, Mayor, council members. So my topic tonight is going to be on energy and the reality of what we call green energy. So since the year 2000, between $5 and $10 trillion has been spent to avoid using carbon-based energy sources. After that massive financial effort, wind and solar globally today accounts for about 3% of the world's electricity supply. So to put that in a perspective, burning wood globally is more than 3 times that amount. So it's just kind of interesting. So even after that $5 to $10 trillion effort, today worldwide, that got the burning wood. And then, the U.S., burning wood is 50% of the energy that we get from wind and solar combined. So there's no evidence that there's a meaningful energy transition going on, and there's certainly no rapid energy transition going on. During that time, that same 2000, since 2000, there's been the equivalent of 6 Saudi Arabia hydrocarbon inputs into the system. So what we have are not transitions, but we have energy additions. So even so, currently there's a global goal of a net zero by 2050. We also see that on the state level. I think it's 2040. We see that on local level. You all have done 2030. So to put that in terms of wind turbines, the common ones we know, that would have meant to achieve that 2050, they would have had to have built 1,000 wind turbines installed per day for 30 years. So it's not really possible. So Germany's often looked up as an example. We follow it. Their energy demand since 2000 has increased 10%. Their hydrocarbon use has remained the same. Wind and solar in Germany increased from about 25 gigawatt to over 100. That's a doubling of their capacity. So the effect on that was to increase their electric bills by 200%. Wind and solar is not cheaper. We see that in Germany. We can see that in Xcel Energy rates. And anywhere you look at where wind and solar has been put into place, you can see the same relationship of increasing energy costs. Okay, so we're at least reducing CO2. Wrong. Renewable is a misnomer. Wind and solar are not renewable. They're not green. They're not green. They are machines that have to be built. They have to be maintained. They wear out. They replaced. So to build these, we have to mine. We have to mine a lot. We have to refine those minerals. Mining requires the same energy input as global aviation. Where does my time go on these things? So we need hundreds of new mines. It's not happening. The metals to deliver a unit of energy from wind and solar requires about 3,000 more materials than a combustion source. We could get into EVs, but I'll only state that they are no different than internal combustion engines in terms of CO2 released. So transition aspirations do not end hydrocarbons. To give you a sense in how futile it is, if 50% of the world's electricity supply was automatically or suddenly converted to nuclear, it would only have about a 10% decrease on the hydrocarbon energy use that we use. So if the problem is CO2, what we are doing, what Longmont is doing, is not a solution, and there's a decent chance it actually would make that part worse. And I get the sincerity. You know, we all want to believe we can, we can solve a problem that has been presented to us. I'm not celebrating any of this. I'm just trying to bring truth and honesty to the discussion table. And the actions that we're taking as a city will only have one result, and that's to make electricity more expensive. It's not going to reduce CO2. We won't have any impact on the global climate. It's just not possible. We talked about housing a lot today. You know, the housing also includes utilities. We talk a good game there, but then we gleefully raise rates, which makes the cost of living in Longmont more expensive. To lead one's life using fantasy as a guiding principle is one thing, but to make public policy using the same is a bad idea. It's just chasing a dream that cannot be realized, and it's worse than pointless. And so let's make good choices going forward for the people who live here and not spend our treasure on things that we have no control over. Whew. Okay, 11 seconds left. I don't normally just read, but I had so much stuff to say. So, we can talk about this, we could talk about CO2, we could talk about climate, all of this is fun. I mean, there's a lot I left out, but electrifying doesn't do what we think it's going to do, and it's because of the reality of mining and the reality of refining. We just shift the input of CO2 in the atmosphere somewhere else, and that's not really fair to the places that we do that to because of the local impacts it has there.
Okay, Councilor Martin.
I don't want to have a long discussion because we would, not get anywhere, but I would like to say that the International Energy Agency
This is where these data come from.
International Energy
IEA.
Agency. Would you please stop interrupting me, Mr. Hodges? Says that since 2010, the global percentage of renewables in the power mix has increased 10 percentage points since 30%. And those mining data can be cherry-picked, but in fact, they don't say what you think they say. That's all I want to say. I just didn't want anyone to take away the idea that, what did you say it was again, that the global percentage...
Which question or which comment?
That the global percentage of generated electricity was 6%.
It's around 3% right now.
Then why does the EIA say that it was 30%?
It's their data. I heard what you said, and I don't think what you said is conflicts on what I said. You said it was a 10% increase from some number.
You can email me your sources,
Okay,
but they said
that's
it's
fine.
to 30%. So 30% worldwide of energy generated now is renewable. Thank you.
That's not true.
Looks like we're going to agree to disagree.
That's fine. Yeah. So energy power is really important, and we should just make good choices. And I'm going to be offering all of you a chance to learn more about this in May. And so as soon as it gets firmed up, I'll send an email out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. Dan Sorrell.
Dan Sorrells. I live at 328.
Sorrell.
That's okay. 328 Grant Street. It's a common way. Boy, a lot that I could talk about, but I'm going to stick on housing. Let's just start here. Efforts to deal with the acute shortage of affordable and attainable housing in Longmont, as we've heard tonight, is controversial. But even with the current amount of construction of apartments and houses, even with the current amount of construction of apartments and houses, it will not nearly be enough to meet the needed supply to increase attainability and affordability. And for what it's worth, this is kind of my day job as well. There's 1,200 apartment units under construction, which includes the 55 at Zinnia right now, and there's about 3,800 in the pipeline in Longmont. So out of the 14,000 shortfall that we have, that takes care of about 4,000 of it. So we still have quite a shortage, even with what's under construction. Longmont isn't the only city dealing with this dilemma. Many cities are facing housing shortages that hamstring economic growth and community cohesion. But many of the cities are finding creative solutions, one of which is the elimination of single-family only zoning regulations in favor of a more flexible approach that allows duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, and other small multifamily units onto lots previously zoned for one unit. These are cities across the U.S. and they're across the political spectrum, from Boise to Berkeley and from Charlottesville to Austin, just to name four. So you may ask, what's the problem with single-family only zoning? It's the American dream, right? Well, first, consider that the single-family only zoning has its roots in racism dating back to 1916 in Berkeley, of all places, where it was used to effectively exclude Chinese and black people from buying by pricing them out. It continued to be used for exclusionary reasons in places like post-war Levittowns, which explicitly banned blacks and even Jews from buying. It was during the post-war decades of the 50s, 60s, and 70s that single-family only zoning became the norm, but at a tremendous environmental and economic cost that is only now being acutely felt, creating a car-centric culture that is contributing to climate change. The environmental impacts are ironic. I came across an article on the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard website. It's Single-Family Zoning, Can History Be Reversed, is the article, and it discusses the rise of any growth measures which were intended to limit urban sprawl. Unfortunately, they had the unintended consequences of severely limiting supply of new housing, pushing prices up and affordability down. It sounds familiar, right? Getting rid of single-family zoning is one step toward dealing with a limited supply, but by itself, it won't be the full answer. The approach needs to be holistic, peeling back and rethinking layers of regulations such as minimum lot sizes, parking minimums, addressing hard and fast setbacks, and easing design review, to name a few. Done piecemeal, it won't work. Consider Minneapolis, which did ban single-family zoning, but failed to increase the allowable height or size of new buildings, and with the net effect of little change. Now is the time to address our housing dilemma. Longmont already has little land left for development, and what is being built are more single-family detached houses located on the edge of Longmont. We heard other speakers earlier talking about why are we using farmland? Well, we're outsourcing our housing from Longmont to places like Erie and Firestone, where they are building on farmland. These locations and the style of building require buyers to go anywhere by car, adding to traffic that is already aggravating so many Longmonters. We can solve much of our problem by thinking and acting holistically. Councilman Hidalgo Faring has mentioned a word several times tonight, balance. That's what we really need to be looking for. And it won't be easy because it's obviously an emotional issue, but decisions made on emotions are the ones that come back to bite us the most. Reasoned, fact-based decisions, not so much. I ask that the city council put this at the top of their agenda and be proactive. Let's not wait for the state to and then react, because we'll already be behind the 8 ball. We can set up the infrastructure for it right now, and then as the state does whatever it's going to do, we can take advantage of it.
Thank you very much.
You're
Those are all good, good suggestions. And actually, we are doing a lot of that in our zoning and codes. So you're right. There more needs to be done, and we're working on it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next people on our list are going to be Kira Niehaus, Lance Whitaker, Stan Toll, Strider, Marlise Lesh.
Hello, council. Nice to see you guys. I'm extremely nervous as I have not talked in front of anybody probably since I was in college.
Oh.
So I was invited to come here tonight just because I have a little bit of a different perspective, although I do agree with a lot of what was said here and the agriculture and the 5G and all those things. Oh, do you guys want my address?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
My apologies. 1205 Pace Street, 80504. Where was I? So I wanted to come here because I grew up in Longmont. I'm 36 years old. I lived here my whole life. I have a 4-year-old and I just had twins. And I want to talk about the housing mainly because I'm in it. And it took me a long time to get housing, and I really pushed for it for years with my daughter. I was in a bad situation with her dad, and I needed to get out of there. And I ended up finding out that I was pregnant with twins and left and went to my mom's. And I tried to get housing, and I tried to get housing. And I specifically remember one of the ladies telling me, "Oh, but you're white and you live with your mom. It's not an emergency." And I was disgusted when I heard that. And I tried so hard for so long and nobody would deal with me. And during all this, I started identifying as a Ukrainian. I put that on my housing application and I was received a voucher. That is not a lie. And, my dad has some of it back in his history, and I asked him if I could use it on my application, and he said yes. And so I put it on there, and I finally got a voucher. Thank you, Lord. I'm so blessed. But I just want you guys to know that coming from somebody who had to do it, it is not that easy. And for you guys saying, "Oh, these houses are for people who grew up here and, are getting older and need to move into homes," it's really difficult to get into affordable housing. It's not like just the cakewalk. And so I don't know where all this housing that's coming up in who's moving into it, but it was really difficult for me. It took me almost 5 years to get in. I was living on top of my parents with my 3 children. And I just wanted to come here and tell you guys kind of my story so that you guys understood it. And, the whole thing is very confusing to me with the housing and what they do. I mean, I got booklet this big when I got my Section 8. I mean, it's like ridiculous what they do, how many hoops they make us jump through and all the stuff they make us fill out and all the stuff. Like, it's just so hard. And it's like, I am a single mom. I live here. I grew up here. Like, why am I having to fight so hard if these are supposedly here to help? And so that's what I got for you. I just wanted to tell you guys my story.
I'm sorry
So it was
you had to
more
go
awareness.
through that.
Thank you. I just want you guys to know that.
I agree with you. It's onerous. So I would like to know, though, after, maybe we can talk, what path did you take to, what was the holdup where? So that we can, I would like to be able to address that, to change it. And I know it's hard on the county level, on the state level,
Right.
even on the local level. So we
And
can't.
I work from home, but I work for a massage therapist who's local here in Longmont, and I am basically her outsourced for marketing and some assistant work, and so she lets me work from my house so I can have the girls home with me. I'm currently still breastfeeding. That's really important for me to do. And I also, the daycare stuff here and the CCAP, I mean, I could just go on and on and on about the horrors of all of that. And so it's just being in my situation and trying to do the right thing for my children and like make the right decisions for them. It's just been so difficult, and you get so pushed into not being there for your kids and not doing that and putting your kids in daycare when they're 6 months old and, you know, doing all these other things. And so it's just been, I feel bullied by the system in a sense.
So we should talk offline.
Okay.
Counselor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Thank you first for sharing your story.
Thanks. It was not easy to get here. My car battery was dead when I went to come, and I ended up having to call somebody for a ride. I mean, it was nuts trying to get here and getting a babysitter. So, but I just want to make it happen so that you guys just had a different perspective of
Yeah,
it.
and having been a single parent of an infant, I know how chaotic it is and how when one thing changes, it upsets your whole routine. And so you have my complete support and sympathy on that score.
They're all females, by the way, my children. So
Good for you.
major sympathy
Good
in
job.
that department. Yeah, it's tough.
I would like to say, well, the city of Longmont only has the capability to audit one of the several voucher providers in the greater Boulder County area. But I am confident from the knowledge that I have of how our housing authority operates, that although it may seem like vouchers are awarded on something other than, an impartial basis, they're awarded on an impartial basis, at least in the Longmont, the ones controlled by the Longmont Housing Authority.
I guess I just wasn't desperate enough at first.
Well, I don't know about that, but you can get pretty desperate because the real truth is that there aren't enough vouchers. And, there is a tight bottleneck on them, and we can only give away the ones that are real, that can be funded, and that money comes from the federal
I
government.
do remember when I first got mine that they called me before I came in and told me that they ran out after they already told me I could come in. And then I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. I felt so, it was like heartbreaking.
Yes.
And then I ended up getting the call later, and they were like, oh, we happen to have a couple pop up, so you can come in. But yeah, it was pretty diehard to
Yes.
get that. So
And, a lot of people don't know things like you need to reapply every year. A lot of people think otherwise, that if they've applied once, they stay in the queue forever. So, it is very hard. And I'm glad that you persevered and got there.
Yeah, it was tough, but thank you guys for listening to my story. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Oh, whoops, we have one more. Kira? Counselor Yarbrough would like to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. No, you don't have to. You can stay right where you are. I just want to say that I can relate to you 100%. I myself am a single mom, but all my kids are grown now, so they will get grown. It's okay. I have 2 girls and 2 boys, but I just want to say thank you for being a long monster and staying here. We do understand the hoops and what it feels like. I myself was a property manager, and so those vouchers come from the government, although I know you think, a lot of people think that the city have control over what can happen and what doesn't happen. But when you apply for those vouchers, there is a system and they have to follow, the city employees have to follow what the government, what HUD requires. And so I just want to reassure you that it wasn't, hopefully, I know it may feel like that when you're in, when you need that support and when you need that help immediately, that the city do whatever they can at that time. And so thank you for being the strong one and getting out of that situation that you were in. And thank you for raising your beautiful girls. And thank you for being brave enough for coming tonight, staying here the entire time, being nervous, speaking up. And I just want to say, I hope you come back and speak on other things that may be going on in the city or that affects you and your family that we need to hear about. Okay?
Food tax.
Okay, well, see, that's it. That's why we have this, thanking the mayor to have this open forum so that you all can come and speak what your truth is. And I want to just kudos to you and thank you and all those who signed up and came tonight. But I know how difficult it is to speak up when you really don't. And it is important for us to know that and hear your story. So I just wanted to let you know that our housing authority we're here for you. And I don't want you to feel that way, but thank you for speaking up about your situation so that our city employees can hear that story and see where the gaps or disparities may have been, okay? So thank you so much.
Kira, the clerk has a form for you to fill out for rebates on different things that will help you. Lance Whitaker, you're up.
Speaking of long monsters, my name's Lance Whitaker, 1750 Collier Street, as you all know. Longmont, Colorado, been a resident for 45 years now. I was gonna say today is National Croissant Day. It is also National Plan Your Vacation Day. So now that business is done, I have a game for you all to play, and it's called What Is in Lance's Pocket? Now, this item that is in Lance's pocket would not be in Lance's pocket had the government not lied to us about cannabis and its history. Cannabis has been one of the earliest medications known to man. Not until Prohibition was it illegalized. And due to Reefer Madness and the Stamp Act, it was continually made illegal through those actions. But what I have in my pocket would have been environmentally sound not to have. As for the food issue, I have been an advocate of fruit trees in parks, as you all know. And I would love to see that you guys strike down the bond farm, as a lot of residents would like to also see. and have you expand Isaac Walton Park and make it a food sustainable park where we could use that actual farm for farming of fruit trees. It would also allow us to fish on the other side of the stock pond that we already possess as on Isaac Walton's, where we stock fish. So not only can you get some fruit, you could also do some fishing. Now, this ain't a solution, but it would give residents of Longmont an opportunity to do other things to make their food maybe a little cheaper. It's not an elimination of the tax, but it is definitely something that we can do as a community. Fruit trees in parks. Thank you. Have a good day. Oh, plastic bag. That's what's in Lance's pocket.
We needed that, Lance, thanks. Marlies? Of course. There you go, got it.
I don't even know what I'm going to talk about now. Of course, I have two main issues too, but it's so much more. It's actually global. And I realized after everything I've heard, first of all, I must applaud you and thank you for even serving in this capacity. I cannot imagine anyone wanting to do the job that you're doing, because how can you help, the whole community? Because this is not a Longmont issue. This is a global issue. This is a U.S. issue. And it's been ever since, and I've been, learning a lot about, the whole financial system. It's this whole debt-based system. And I remember, I'm fortunate, I immigrated at a time after the war, like 58, 61, husband 58, that we were still able to just live on one regular salary and be able to, live in a home. I could be home with my children, all of that. And I had no idea why all of a sudden, early 70s, I remember that yet. I said, my friend said, did you see? I went to the supermarket. It went up that much already. Look at this. And of course, only decades later, I learned that's when Richard Nixon took the gold standard, the rest of the gold standard of the dollar, and that free-floated it around the world. And this is what has been happening. It's been planned like that all along, all these decades. More and more money had to be printed, or the zeros had to be added. And what does it do for the whole population? It just increases everything. So the housing issue, it's not a Longmont issue. We know that. And that's why it's so difficult for you to really, do the right thing for everyone. Because there are, and I love the fruit trees. Over in Germany, we have fruit trees everywhere. I mean, just along the highways and the little, roads going into villages. We could just stop. I could bike anywhere and stop, pick fruits. And the fruit is the most expensive because you cannot even get the organic, which is healthy, a lot of it, because I tested with kinesiology. So you cannot even trust that. And most people don't know. And the same thing with the smart meters. I'm very familiar with that. I'm also very, very sensitive. Actually, when I was sitting in a little office with, even touching the mouse or taking the cordless telephone, I would get like a electric shock. And I saw like a spark even. I couldn't even touch it. And then I found out that was over in Germany. We were volunteering for a year. That there was a police station with all of those Wi-Fis and, all the electrification, and then the firehouse also down the street. And that really put a load onto everyone who lived there. And I had a headache from morning till night until I called my friend. How many people can afford $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 at that time to use a technology that would safeguard me? Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to volunteer there. So it was gone within 2 days after he installed it. That's how many people can afford it, but how many people would even know what made them sick or where it's coming from. Most of them are not even aware of it. And that's the same thing with putting these smart meters in. People were not notified necessarily, but they don't even know why it is a health hazard. And it's a lot more than just us personally. So I just want you to know that even at my age, I feel so fortunate to have lived at a time that we could, just afford and then sell the house and then get a cheaper one someplace else, or, even get get two for it if you move from one state to another. No wonder people are usually forced to move only in order to be in a cheaper area. I mean, none of that makes sense, but it is, if we know about the global agenda, I'm sure there are people all around the world who know about the ones who are pulling the strings. It's not you, it's not our governor, it's not even what you call a president. I don't even call him a president, whoever, because they're all puppets, whether it's in Germany or anywhere. Yeah, I didn't time it. I figured you can just stop me when it's 5 minutes. But I'll tell you, I pray a lot. I wish you all the best because we all need it. We need mainly prayers and believing in the good because it is happening. I'm working as a volunteer globally with a spiritual healing group. And there are a lot of wonderful movements for the good that is going to come down the pipe. So we have to believe in that.
Thank you. Thank you for the messages. Ross Starrett, Steve Altschuler, and Vicki Kirsch. Oh, Stan. Well, you guys just get ready. Stand tall. Stand tall.
Mayor Peck and council, it's amazing that we're even still awake. What I was going to do is just first comment on a couple of things that were said earlier. As far as the food tax, and that's a very regressive tax, and I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And that what would make a lot more sense would be to make up the money from that would be something like at the property tax, where it's more connected with the amount of wealth a person has. Of course, there's a lot of pushback for any sort of property tax. But what I would suggest how it would be done is to make it that, let's say, I think we have to have votes on this, but a property tax would be directly connected with getting rid of the food tax. And with the information about how much this is going to cost, that, let's say, for the average person, it's not going to be an increase, but it's going to reduce the stress on people that are having trouble even affording food. The other thing is I actually have had this discussion when I've come up to council before, is that when we have elections, we need to avoid having the most people showing up to vote being the dying baby boomers. Particularly the ones that are getting very, very close to that. If we have our votes on off elections when very few people are showing up, the people that are going to be showing up are the people that are going to be, historically, be very negative for anything doing in the community because they're getting ready to check out. And they just don't want anything interfering with their checkout routine. So if we can have our things where we want to do things on the main elections, like the presidential election times, the times that where, quote, people are saving their votes for the big one, which really, I know that that's the time that your vote is least likely to count. But that's the time when the young people show up. That's the time that the casual voters that I would like to have this, but so that's my input on that. This guy mentioned the toilets and how we're having, I actually, between being sick and injured at times, I kind of looked into this. And King Soopers had I noticed that our toilets were really poorly maintained. And I was over at King Soopers when they were doing their bathroom modifications and they had their porta things outside. And I talked to the professional that was handling that. And he says, yeah, we had this company, and it was the company that was handling the Lawnmont stuff. And he says they were horrible. So we finally got somebody else. Now, I made notes, but of course I can't, life intervened. I would suggest contacting King Soopers and find out who they replaced their porta potties people with. And so, they got somebody that took care, they were really bad, and then they got a lot better. So that's my suggestion there. The other thing is, of course, the housing situation, and we need to get rid of a lot of our regulations like some people have talked about. But what I was going to mention to you is that there are people that, they're going along and all of a sudden what's happening, they get kind of disabled and they really don't have incomes over like $800-900 a month. And so the last thing is that there's a lot of people who can't be allowed in the shelters. We need to have places for these people.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, is checking out the same as a bucket list?
Yeah. Well, it's not the same, but it seems like they don't want to spend any. Well, of course you get afraid because you don't know how long this checking out is going to take. So you want to save every single penny.
Thank you, Stan. So Ross. Oh, Strider, how can I forget you? Come on up. But the other three can come down and sit and get ready. That's Ross, Starrett, Steve Altshuler, and Vicky. I see Vicky. Steve is no longer here. He's left the building.
Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. Referring to a previous speaker, there's a pink one, and a green one, and a blue one, and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. That's Levittown, and almost every one of those communities after World War II had redlining or restrictions against black people and Jews and anybody they didn't want there. And that's kind of how the, modern America got built. And then after the 70s, then builders would only build mega mansions. So smaller housing got thrown off the map because all the money went into building mega mansions. But anyway, somebody mentioned the election thing. I've been an election judge here 3 times, I believe it is. And I've spent my whole life, fighting for democracy and justice. I got knocked out twice on Bloody Sunday. I was right behind John Lewis on the bridge in Selma. First time I registered to vote was in Selma, right after a lot of things going on. But, Churchill said, democracy is the worst system except for all the others. And yes, democracy is corrupt because corrupt people get in. But autocracy and dictatorship is totally corrupt, 100%, and there's no oversight and no way to deal with it because they rule by violence, intimidation, and now what they're doing is abolishing history, abolishing education, and I have a master's in philosophy and history and humanities and political science, so I've never been able to have a job except for heavy labor because the people who run the system, just like Vincent van Gogh said, they have other ideas than myself. So I've never been allowed to have that kind of work. Climate catastrophe, it's a difficult subject, but the only way to deal with it is democratically because you put in dictatorships 100% corrupt, and they will always go to where all the money flow to themselves is. And that's how the game works. In this country, all right, I have quoted before Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, back before he took power in 1928, he advised Hitler, he said, no policy, chaos. Chaos is the best policy. And that is exactly what the former president spent. One thing he studied in his whole life, aside from stealing, not paying workers, not paying taxes, and all of that, is Hitler. He studied how Hitler took power, and that's exactly what was going on. And what they're doing now is chaos to destroy the structure of our democratic republic. Franklin said, somebody asked him, what kind of government do you have? He said, we have a republic if we can keep it. We're under the greatest threat right now today than we've been in 164 years since the Civil War. And it's all intentional on that part. And to abolish the, human rights, women's rights, labor rights, environmental rights, all the way down the line, it is formal policy on the part of the Chaos Caucus, and their intention is to destroy our parliamentary, our democracy, our Congress, and the best, most current writing on that, The Crisis of Parliamentary Democracy by Carl Schmitt, written in 1923 and again in 26. He was part of the Weimar Republic, and eventually he gave up and joined Hitler. And then after the war, he came over here. He wrote a book with Leo Strauss. But that is what we're dealing with right now. And as difficult as it is, democracy is the only chance we have to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. As usual, good points.
Thank you.
Oh, now, Ross and Vicky.
All right, Ross Sterrett, 2161 Steel Street. So I was just going to talk a little bit about how we have all of this single-family residential zoning. Can't build anything in it. You can't, from where I live all the way over to Main Street. From Hover to Main, it's just single family with there's Sanborn Elementary, and it's nothing. My options to get groceries are walk along Hover to Safeway or I could drive, but it's such a short drive that it feels ridiculous. But it's not comfortable because it's Hover. But you see a lot of people doing it. But I think that we could probably do a lot better in building our urban environment if we let people build, slightly more units on their land. Like instead of one house, you could have a duplex or maybe like 3 townhouses right next to each other. You could allow that in those zones, in that zone. You could allow front yard businesses like a coffee shop or like a board game store, stuff like that. Things like that could really go a long way for helping us not need to drive as much. It would help people be able to live closer to the things that they need. It would bring down people's daily costs by doing that. And transportation is related to this, of course. I mean, sign me up for the Go Yell at RTD mailing list.
Okay.
I work in Boulder. It takes about an hour, 20 minutes to get to work in the morning, usually longer at night because Bolt gets stuck in traffic at IBM, and then the buses leave. Excuse me, hiccup. This is again yelling at RTD, but I had to drive here because the last bus left 8th and Kaufman at about the same time we started. So you can't even go watch a movie or go to dinner by taking the bus. You have to drive unless you live close enough to walk or bike. So those are things that we can look at. Yelling at RTD again. I know that there's supposedly some reworks coming. I know that there's going to be projects for the diagonal that are about to start up. Those are excited about those, but we can really think about, looking at what we have and being do we need over a mile straight of just single family houses? We can consider maybe allowing other things to be there too that go with that, groceries and things to do, restaurants. I think that would go a long way towards making Longmont a better place for everybody. And if we're letting people build more houses on existing land, we can maybe knock a dent in that 14,000 missing units. That's about all I got.
All good suggestions.
Yeah, nothing super new, but end of the line.
Sir, Councillor Christ has something to say.
I just wanted to make everyone aware that on Thursday is the Transportation Mobility Plan open house at the library. It starts at 5:30.
Okay,
and it's
great.
good to hear all this feedback for transportation.
All right,
so,
cool.
Appreciate it.
Glad to hear about that.
Yeah.
Thursday at 5:30.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vicki? No, it has to turn red. There you go, you
There?
did it.
Hi, Vicki Kirsch, 1700 Gifford. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you a great deal. I can tell you have kind hearts and you want the best for your community. And thank you. I know it's very complicated. I'm here mainly to talk about removing the food tax. And this may not be a popular suggestion, but I'll say it anyway. My idea to I knew right away you couldn't just drop the tax. So how about raising taxes on luxury items, first-time buyers for boats and jewelry and furniture? That's just an idea. Unfortunately, I think food is a very great issue right now, and it's going to become more so. And they're talking about food security. And it's the most disadvantaged people that suffer. And everyone should have a right to healthy food, and people don't even have that right now. They're not even eating healthy. They're eating what they can. So anyway, And I believe part of it, besides what Marlise spoke about, this overall cultural issue, that it's inequities in minimum wage and overpriced housing that makes it unable for people to afford adequate food. And so I think that really we have to make it a strong commitment, because I think it will become more problematic in terms of people on the streets and homeless and so on. And that I do believe we could take it on. I think Longmont is in a better position than most places because we do have agricultural land and we do have possibilities for growing that way. And but I also wanted to point out this thing of taxing, that what people don't understand about taxing is that when it comes to a loaf of bread, so you say we pay the tax when you buy it from the store. The farmer paid the tax for his land and the tax for his machinery and the tax for the gas and the tax for this and that and the other. That all goes into that loaf of bread. And then you have the maker of the bread who paid all the taxes. So really, the people are paying an exorbitant amount. It all adds up. It's not just, it didn't disappear. It became the cost of the loaf of bread. So that's part of the inflationary process. So it's excess taxation, and that somehow we have to be able to work with that. And anyway, I just wanted to say that I think our efforts should be mostly to focus on being human beings who care for each other and make sure people aren't going hungry. So.
Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah.
If only we ruled the world.
Yeah, I know. Well, we can.
Okay.
That's what we believe in, right?
Yes. Well, for everybody that's watching at home and those that are still here, thank you very, very much for your input, comments, passion, and patience for waiting until 10:25 at night to talk. Since this isn't a regular agenda, can I just have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.